Martial Peak, Chapter 4262, Don't Run. Aside from those mid-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters and high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters whose strength were on a completely different scale altogether, Black Crow Divine Monarch, who possessed somebody else and came back to life, was definitely the strongest and toughest enemy Yang Kai had ever encountered. Even Great Demon God who he fought back then could not compare. That was because Black Crow Divine Monarch was practically undying and immortal. When Yang Kai fought Great Demon God, the entire star boundary had risen up to fight back together. He had countless companions by his side, supporting each other in adversity. However, he was currently fighting alone. Moreover, Yang Kai was not confident that he could kill Black Crow Divine Monarch. After all, his most powerful attack, Golden Crow Casts the Sun, had been rendered useless by his opponent. It could even be said that he no longer had any cards left to play aside from the divine ability bead given to him by the proprietress. It was a precarious situation. Yang Kai stabbed forward with his spear again and again as space principles fluctuated wildly. At the same time, his figure leapt about and flickered erratically. Each attack inflicted massive damage to Black Crow Divine Monarch, but the latter simply healed from even the most lethal and deadliest injuries in short order. While Black Crow Divine Monarch continuously received heavy injuries, Yang Kai's injuries were also becoming more and more severe. It had always been Yang Kai who relied on his powerful restorative abilities to put up a desperate fight against the others. Thus, he never imagined that there would come a day where somebody else would use the same method against him. It truly was a case of what went around came around. Fate was truly unpredictable. Yang Kai's vision flickered and went dark from time to time as he desperately drew out his potential to exceed his limits. Even if he failed to kill the old dog today, he had to let the other party know that he was not to be trifled with. Otherwise, it would only be a matter of time before he became a lamp running out of oil if Black Crow Divine Monarch continued to hunt him down like this. When the bloodlight struck towards him, Yang Kai lifted his spear to block the attack and deflected Black Crow Divine Monarch's twin butterfly daggers to the side with soft clanging sounds. However, one of the blood knives suddenly turned into a cloud of blood and vanished. Simultaneously, a wave of murderous intent came from behind, locked onto him. Yang Kai was shocked. How could he not realize that he had fallen into a trap? Hurriedly moving his body to dodge, he suddenly felt a slight pain around his waist and abdomen. He looked down only to see a bloodlight pouring into his back and coming out around his waist. The bloodlight had opened a gaping hole in his body that his blood was gushing out of. The bloodlight flew back to Black Crow Divine Monarch's hand, where he raised it in front of him in its dagger form, licked the blade lightly, and nodded in approval. The blood of a divine spirit is delicious indeed. Yang Kai staggered backward by a few steps. Reaching out his hand to clutch at his waist, he circulated his strength to seal the wound as his figure swayed unsteadily. I'm at my limit. Despite giving it his all, Yang Kai had reached the limits that his body could withstand. He might end up dying in this place if he continued fighting, causing him to sigh. Now that things had come to this point, he could only choose to escape and find a place to recuperate from his injuries. Unfortunately, it would not be easy to get rid of Black Crow Divine Monarch's pursuit in his current condition. Junior, if you have any last words, speak them now. Black Crow Divine Monarch held a dagger in each hand. After saying that, his figure shifted slightly and he rushed forward to come directly in front of Yang Kai. The twin daggers came slashing down from both sides as overwhelming murderous intent surged from him. Yang Kai raised his spear to parry and in the next instant there was a loud explosion. He could sense an overwhelmingly powerful force coming from above him and even with his half-dragon body, he could not withstand the impact. His entire figure was pressed down by the force, so much so that he was almost kneeling on the ground. His vision went black again, and by the time it recovered, Black Crow Divine Monarch's face was practically right in front of him, grinning as he sneered, "Die." Yang Kai grit his teeth and let out a roar. His spiritual energy erupted violently from within his knowledge sea, turning into a haphazard attack that blasted towards Black Crow Divine Monarch. Black Crow Divine Monarch's savage grin instantly stiffened in response and even his eyes seemed to bulge as though he received a huge shock. The terrifying pressure suddenly relaxed. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yang Kai quickly steadied himself and swung his spear at Black Crow Divine Monarch. His attack sent the latter flying, and before Black Crow Divine Monarch could get further away from him, the Azure Dragon Spear had already thrust out hundreds of times in a row. Every single attack blasted out with heaven-destroying and earth-shattering power. Black Crow Divine Monarch was utterly powerless in the face of those attacks, and his body was smashed to pieces as a result. Yang Kai was stunned for a moment as he had not expected such a change in the battle. It was out of desperation that he unleashed a soul attack just now. He simply wanted to relieve some of the pressure bearing down on him, but who could have known that he would strike Black Crow Divine Monarch's weakness with that attack? It caused the latter's strength to drop sharply and even froze him on the spot for a moment. After pondering for a while, realization suddenly struck Yang Kai. Black Crow Divine Monarch was just a remnant soul in the first place. Moreover, he was severely injured inside Yang Kai's knowledge sea. Not to mention, he had been forced to separate a thread of his consciousness to create a diversion in order to escape. Afterward, he went on to possess Ju Yi's body. Although he was successful in his attempt, it was not as simple as it seemed from the surface. Regardless of the circumstances, Ju Yi was still an elite disciple of Great Thousand Bloodland, so his aptitude was not bad. Therefore, Black Crow Divine Monarch would definitely need to pay a price in order to possess his body. How strong could Black Crow Divine Monarch's soul be after overcoming all these obstacles? In other words, his spiritual energy was nothing compared to the mighty power he displayed earlier, and it was no wonder a single soul attack from Yang Kai was capable of causing such heavy damage to him. He didn't even have the strength to fight back, and this was the reason. Upon understanding this point, Yang Kai felt extremely annoyed. He had been fooled by the overwhelming momentum displayed by the other party and forgot about this crucial point. If he had realized it sooner, then this fight would not have been nearly as difficult. Using one's strength to target the opponent's weakness. How could he not understand such a simple truth? Nevertheless, it was not too late for him to realize this now. Black Crow Divine Monarch was blasted to pieces by that attack just now, but he did not die. The pieces of hashed meat swiftly melted into blood that quickly converged together. The blood flowed and vaguely took on a humanoid figure. How could Yang Kai simply stand back and watch? He sent out another blast of spiritual energy, causing the blood gathering together to immediately show signs of falling apart again. Swinging his spear, Yang Kai scattered the blood into the surroundings once more. Black Crow Divine Monarch's mournful screams rang out. The blood squirmed and flowed, transforming into a blood cloud that quickly fled into the distance. "Where are you trying to run?" Yang Kai roared. Lifting his spear, he hurriedly gave chase. However, he had only taken a few steps when his strength left his body and he slumped to the ground. It was fortunate that he had the Azure Dragon Spear to support himself, otherwise, he would have collapsed on his face then and there. "Junior, I'll spare your life this time. I will definitely take your head the next time we meet." From far away, Black Crow Divine Monarch's voice sounded from the blood cloud. "Don't run. If you're not a coward, come and fight me." Yang Kai roared furiously. He wanted to pursue Black Crow Divine Monarch but did not have the strength to do so, hence, he could only watch helplessly as his enemy fled further and further away until he vanished out of sight. Yang Kai smashed his fist heavily onto the ground, his expression full of annoyance. Having missed the perfect opportunity to kill Black Crow Divine Monarch this time, he was not sure if another chance would appear again in the future. An old monster that had been sealed for countless years like Black Crow Divine Monarch was not a common occurrence in the first place. After catching his breath for a while, Yang Kai turned and studied his surroundings. He did not know if Black Crow Divine Monarch had really retreated or if he was only feigning retreat. In any case, he was currently in terrible condition and could not help feeling slightly uneasy as a result. He did not dare to remain in place for long, lest he suffer if the old dog decided to turn around and attack him. Putting the Azure Dragon Spear away, Yang Kai stuffed a handful of restorative spirit pills into his mouth before fleeing in a certain direction. He had not gone further than a few hundred kilometers though when he suddenly collapsed on the ground, lacking the strength to move a single finger. The fight with Black Crow Divine Monarch had exhausted him completely and it was a miracle he could escape even this far. Yang Kai was feeling extremely dizzy and his vision turned dark from time to time as he felt as though he could faint at any moment. Nevertheless, He forced himself to stay awake as he did not dare to lose consciousness. That was because there was no saying what would happen to him if he passed out under these circumstances. After all, there were countless monster beast and cultivators in the blood monster cave heaven at the moment. He barely managed to activate his divine sense and opened the boundaries of the small sealed world to release Chu Hua Shong from within. Before he could even say anything to her, his head tilted to the side and he fell unconscious. Chu Hua Shong had been in the middle of treating her injuries when she was brought out of the small sealed world by Yang Kai. She initially felt confused about the situation, but then she turned around to see Yang Kai lying on the ground and covered in blood. His clothes were in tatters and numerous bone-deep wounds dotted his body. In addition, there was a gaping hole that penetrated his body from front to back at his waist. Thus, she couldn't help being shocked by the sight and called out in alarm, "Junior brother Yang, junior brother Yang." Rushing over, she knelt beside him, her complexion pale. She had no idea what he went through while she was recuperating from her injuries. However, judging from the extent of his injuries, it was definitely an extremely dangerous battle. She tremblingly placed a hand under his nose and discovered that he was still breathing, albeit faintly. Letting out a deep breath of relief, she slumped to the ground weakly. "I thought he was dead. I'm so glad he's still alive. But, with injuries this severe." She reached out a hand and lightly brushed against those vicious-looking wounds, her body shivering lightly. Leaving aside how long it would take for him to heal from these injuries, there was no saying what kind of consequences he might suffer even after fully recovering. She more or less had a grasp of Yang Kai's true abilities and knew that not many people or monster beasts in the blood monster cave heaven could possibly force him to this extent. Could it be that Black Crow Divine Monarch was pursuing us? The moment that thought crossed her mind, she suddenly became agitated and anxious. She did not dare to remain in this place, therefore, she hurriedly took out some topical healing medicine, tore open his clothes, and applied some of the medicinal liquid to his body. Afterward, she took out a robe from her own space ring and wrapped him in it. Lifting him onto her back, she then quickly ran off. Yang Kai vaguely felt his body moving up and down in his unconscious state. A fragrant scent entered his nose, enticing him sweetly. Furthermore, there was a soft and plump sensation pressing against his body. Something tickled his cheeks, almost as though a strand of hair was gently stroking his heartstrings. It was the very picture of a so-called tender love nest. For a time, he could not figure what kind of situation he was in, but just as he was about to get a clear look of his surroundings, a burst of pain erupted throughout his entire body, causing him to hiss in pain. "Junior brother Yang, are you awake?" Chu Hua Shong's voice entered his ears. She was out of breath and her voice sounded weak. "En." He responded and opened his eyes to look. Only then did he realize that he was being carried on her back. Her hands were supporting his thighs and she was leaning forward slightly while running quickly. In addition, his head was resting crookedly on her shoulder. Due to a matter of angle, his mouth would occasionally come into contact with her delicate cheeks and fair neck. He never imagined that he would be greeted by this kind of situation as soon as he opened his eyes. Thus, he was stunned for a moment. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4263, Sharing Life and Death. Yang Kai had barely managed to keep himself awake long enough to release Chu Hua Shong from the small sealed world at the time. The reason for his actions was so that she could watch over him in case he was attacked by either a cultivator or a monster beast when he was unconscious. It should have been safer for him that way. However, he had no idea why this woman was running desperately whilst carrying him on her back. When his body rose and fell with her movements, all the wounds on his body screamed in pain, causing him to grunt in agony. Patting her on the shoulder, he weakly said, "Senior sister, please put me down." "I can't, junior brother." She shook her head, her hair brushing against his cheek. Just as he was about to ask why, he suddenly detected a violent attack coming from behind. The attack sliced through the air with a loud rumbling noise, forcing her to dodge to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. Yang Kai was shocked and groaned, "Is that old dog still chasing me?" He could not tell how long he had been unconscious for, however, judging from the recovery of his injuries, it must have been 2 or 3 days by now. If they were ordinary wounds, he would already have recovered completely, but the situation this time was different from the usual. It was very difficult for the wounds that he received from his fight with Black Crow Divine Monarch to heal, therefore, he was still extremely weak and his strength had not recovered by much. There was a strange and troublesome force festering in his wounds that constantly ate away at them and prevented them from healing. So much time has passed. Don't tell me Black Crow Divine Monarch is still chasing me. Yang Kai could not imagine how Chu Huashong had persevered for so long. It's not Black Crow Divine Monarch. She shook her head again. While speaking, she stumbled and nearly lost her balance. She herself had yet to recover from her injuries, so she was in dire need of recuperation. Unfortunately, she was currently being chased. Although she was not yet a lamp running out of oil, she wasn't in good condition either. Then, who is it? Yang Kai asked in surprise. At this moment, a person's voice came from a distance behind them. Junior Sister Chu, this senior brother has no intention to harm you. Put Yang Kai down and you are free to leave on your own. Why do you have to struggle so hard to escape? The voice sounded rather familiar and Yang Kai vaguely felt like he had heard it somewhere before. After thinking about it, he abruptly became furious. Doesn't this voice belong to that little bastard Yin Xinjiao from Shen Yuan Cave Heaven? Before the Blood Monster Cave Heaven opened, Shen Yuan Cave Heaven had come to seize their spot. In return, Yang Kai used his mastery of the Tao of Space to steal many of their entrances. He had targeted Yin Xinjiao in particular and stolen the entrance that was nearest to him. Hence, Yang Kai wrongly assumed that Yin Xinjiao would not have the chance to step into the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. Who could have known that they would encounter each other here? Moreover, the other party was relentlessly hunting him down. This guy has pretty good luck. How did he enter the Blood Monster Cave Heaven under those circumstances? Turning back to look, Yang Kai saw Yin Xinjiao doggedly chasing Chu Huashong, and he was not alone either. There were two helpers beside him, probably disciples of Shen Yuan Cave Heaven. In terms of strength, Chu Huashong was probably not inferior to Yin Xinjiao and neither of them would lose to each other in a one-on-one fight. It was just that she was still injured and the other side had two helpers with him. How could she be their opponent? It was not hard to understand why she was fleeing while being chased. How did you encounter this guy? Yang Kai was livid. If he met Yin Xinjiao under normal circumstances, he would not be afraid of him. However, he had yet to recover his strength after his battle against Black Crow Divine Monarch recently. Bad luck. Chu Huashong gave a bitter laugh and briefly explained what happened. After being released from the small sealed world by Yang Kai, she immediately took him away from the battlefield. She originally wanted to find a quiet and remote place to recuperate, but how could she have anticipated running into Yin Xinjiao and his group, who came to investigate the situation, before she could find a place to hide? The battle between Yang Kai and Black Crow Divine Monarch had created a huge commotion. Yin Xinjiao and his two fellow brothers had been in the vicinity, so it was only natural that they noticed the commotion. Upon seeing that it was Yang Kai, Yin Xinjiao was overjoyed and immediately wanted Chu Huashong to hand him over to them. How could Chu Huashong agree to his demands though? As such, she fled while coyly refusing his request. It had been 2 days since then. Fortunately, Yin Xinjiao still had to give face to Yin Yang Cave Heaven, so he did not dare to kill her. Otherwise, it was hard to say whether she could protect Yang Kai. It was just that his patience gradually ran out as time passed, so his attacks were becoming more and more lethal. He was acting as though he was going to kill Yang Kai recklessly. That bastard. Yang Kai gritted his teeth and patted Chu Huashong on the shoulder. Senior Sister Chu, please put me down. Although the feeling of lying on her back was very comfortable, how could he allow a woman to struggle desperately for his sake at a time like this? He couldn't help cursing in his heart. The Blood Monster Cave Heaven really isn't a place for people to be in. I just got rid of Black Crow Divine Monarch and now I'm being targeted by Yin Xinjiao. Does that mean I will constantly be hunted in this place? It's fine. Junior brother, you should continue resting. Let's talk again once you've regained some of your strength. Chu Huashong could sense that he was in very poor condition, so how could she agree to his request so easily? Junior Sister Chu, since you are so stubborn, then don't blame this senior brother for attacking without mercy. Yin Xinjiao's furious roar came from behind. Following his words, a whip-like sword light came slashing in this direction and arrived not far behind them in the blink of an eye. The power of this golden light was extreme, and it could be seen that he had truly lost his temper. His scruples towards Yin-Yang Cave Heaven could not stop his resolution to kill Yang Kai. By the time Chu Huashong noticed and wanted to avoid the attack, it was already too late. As a last resort, she could only turn sideways and throw out a palm in the direction of the attack together with Yang Kai Hong, star. A violent force spread out, and although the two of them had managed to block Yin Xinjiao's attack together, they were also sent flying by the force of impact. *pu, Chu Huashong spat out a mouthful of fresh blood and her complexion turned as pale as a sheet. Similarly, Yang Kai was in no better condition. He felt an even more intense pain coming from all the wounds on his body. A sweetness filled his throat and he nearly coughed up a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, he managed to force the feeling down in time. Even in this situation, Chu Huashong continued to carry him on her back and did not throw him off. It made him feel extremely grateful towards her. He had no idea why she was struggling so desperately for his sake. Seeing that Yin Xinjiao and the others were approaching, Chu Huashong struggled to get back on her feet, but failed. On the other hand, Yang Kai had already recovered some strength from his rest earlier. Upon seeing this situation, he pulled her into his arms and took a deep breath. Space principles wrapped around them and they vanished from the spot. By the time they reappeared again, they were already several dozen kilometers away. It was just that this forceful method of exerting his strength left Yang Kai feeling extremely uncomfortable. He had only just stabilized his injuries when all the strength left his body and he collapsed to the ground again. Chu Huashong let out a scream of surprise as she tumbled to the ground. Yang Kai coughed lightly but incessantly. Scrambling and crawling on the ground, he hurriedly came to her side and anxiously said, "Senior sister, are you all right?" She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "My butt is bruised from the fall. If you don't believe me, you can touch and see for yourself." Yang Kai nearly spat blood at those words for an entirely different reason than before. What kind of situation are we in right now? How can you still be so flirtatious? There's no helping this woman anymore. Reaching out to grab her arm, Yang Kai carried her on his back and quickly sped off. Although he had used instantaneous movement to put some distance between them and their pursuers, they had yet to escape completely from Yin Xinjiao's range of perception. The three people from Xianyuan Cave Heaven were still chasing them relentlessly, and although Yang Kai wanted to use instantaneous movement again, he no longer had the strength to do so. It was Chu Huashong who was carrying Yang Kai earlier as they fled, but the situation was reversed now. She happily climbed on his back, wrapped her arms around his neck and her legs around his waist like an octopus. It was not until this moment that Yang Kai noticed something strange. "Why am I wearing a dress?" Chu Huashong exhaled an orchid scent in his ear as she explained, "Your clothes were in tatters, so I tossed them. I couldn't just leave you naked, right?" He had no answer to that. It might be embarrassing to have a dress wrapped around him, but it was still within an acceptable range. It would have been far worse to be carried naked by a woman. His priority at the moment was to escape, so he had no time to complain about the way he was dressed. He secretly regretted his decision. "If I had known that this would happen, I would have brought Pu Bai Xing with me." The grapes on Pu Bai Xing's head were incredibly restorative divine medicines after all. It would only take a single grape for him to recover completely in a short time. Forget a single Yin Xinjiao, he would even be able to kill 10 Yin Xinjiaos if he was at his peak. It was just that he had left Little Mushroom in the illusion array to act as its array core after the 9 heavenly layers grand array was fully set up. The gourd vine had also been left under the care of others in Voidland because of its special role. Out of the 3 divine medicines that Yang Kai brought out of the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, 2 had to stay in Voidland, so naturally, Pu Bai Xiong was not willing to leave either. He was adamant about staying behind in Voidland to accompany Little Mushroom and the Bottle Gourd brothers. Therefore, Yang Kai had allowed him to do as he pleased. Who could have known that a divine monarch would possess somebody and come back to life inside the Blood Monster Cave Heaven? Who could have expected the situation would become so dangerous? Yang Kai had assumed that his strength was enough that he could run wild in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. At the very least, he would not be in any danger. I was too careless. No matter what, I have to bring a few grapes along with me next time for emergencies. Junior brother, can we consider ourselves lovers after sharing life and death together? Chu Hua Shong suddenly asked. Lovers, my foot. Yang Kai was rendered speechless by her. He had initially felt nervous being pursued by enemies, but the tense atmosphere vanished after listening to what Chu Hua Shong said. She pouted in an aggrieved tone, I've never struggled so desperately for a man in my life. To which Yang Kai nodded, this junior brother will keep in mind the life-saving grace you have shown me today, senior sister. I will never forget it. Chu Hua Shong giggled and replied lightly, junior brother also saved me back in the grand ancient ruins boundary. Besides, I would have lost my life if you had not stopped Black Crow Divine Monarch earlier. Taking all these into account, you helped me more. Things like favors and life-saving graces can never be settled with numbers. That's true. She leaned her head against his shoulder and nodded lightly. A short moment of silence later, she said, junior brother, put me down. You should escape on your own. Yang Kai was taken aback by her words. What about you? Her voice had weakened considerably as she muttered, I'm afraid I can't go on any longer. I'm too tired. I think I'll take a little nap. His expression changed drastically. Hold on, senior sister. You can't fall asleep. It was not until this moment that he noticed his palms were sticky. He lifted his right hand and saw that they were covered in bright red blood. His blood was golden, so this red blood undoubtedly belonged to her. Although they joined forces and managed to block Yin Xinjiao's attack earlier, it was obvious that she had been injured at the time. Yang Kai swept his divine sense over her and discovered that she had a vicious wound on her waist. Moreover, her blood stained the ground in their wake. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4264, Seeking Life by Crossing the Gates of Death. Hold on, Senior Sister Chu, Yang Kai shouted, you'll be alright. If something happens to me, will you be sad? Chu Hua Shong asked softly. Of course. So, you can't let anything happen to you. Yang Kai nodded with certainty. As a Yin-Yang Cave Heaven disciple, Yin Xinjiao would not have dared to lay a finger on her if she had abandoned him to his own devices. However, Chu Hua Shong had chosen to flee while carrying him and was currently on the verge of death as a result. If anything happened to her, he would definitely feel guilty for the rest of his life. In that case, I'm relieved. She chuckled softly, but it's a little regretful. Senior sister, what do you find regretful? Let's hear it, he quickly asked. She was currently in poor condition, so a conversation was just the thing to keep her focused. I've never tasted a man before. If I die just like this, then wouldn't I have lived my life in vain? Her tone was humorous. Yang Kai had nothing to say in response. As expected of a Yin-Yang Cave Heaven disciple, she really dares to say just about anything. However, it was not that strange either after he thought about it. This woman was somebody who could clearly and eloquently discuss the grand Tao of Yin-Yang union cultivation with him after all. Junior brother, can you promise me one thing if I survive this time? Don't hold back, senior sister. Forget one thing. I don't mind doing 10 or 100 things for you. Dual cultivate with me. Her words were incredibly shocking. It was almost as though she would not be happy unless she frightened him to death. Yang Kai stumbled and nearly tumbled headfirst to the ground. His voice sounded rather uncertain. Senior sister, what did you say just now? I believe I misheard you. She chuckled softly. You didn't mishear me, junior brother. Why are you still joking around at a time like this? He angrily snapped. Nevertheless, she replied in all seriousness, I am not joking around. I want to cultivate together with you. I want to do what men and women do when they are together. He shook his head. Senior sister, your injuries are too severe. You seem a little delirious. Why don't you take a rest? After saying that, he poured his strength chi into her body slightly, causing her to stiffen then faint on his back. Behind them, Yin Xinjiao and his two fellow disciples were getting closer and closer. Although Yang Kai had used instantaneous movement to put some distance between them earlier, he could not escape their pursuit in his current state. During their conversation just now, Yin Xinjiao and the two others had already arrived within 5 kilometers. Such a distance was nothing to a half-step open heaven realm master. The lights of various secret techniques and artifacts blasted out as Yin Xinjiao's group attacked from the rear. Yang Kai shifted Chu Huashong, carrying her in his arms to prevent her from being hit by the attacks. At the same time, he activated the dragon transformation secret art to cover his back with dragon scales. He planned to avoid as many attacks as possible, but for those he couldn't, he had to take them with his body. After several rounds, blood flowed endlessly and his condition worsened even further. Yang Kai, weren't you acting so high and mighty back in the blood monster territory? Why don't you stop and fight me now if you have the gut? Let's see if this yin can't take your life. Yin Xinjiao shouted whilst in pursuit. Yang Kai roared furiously, Yin Xinjiao, I will definitely kill you one day if I survive this. Yin Xinjiao roared with laughter, looks like you will never get the chance. Because you will definitely die here today. Yang Kai coldly snorted. He couldn't be bothered to argue with Yin Xinjiao. While he had the divine ability bead given to him by the proprietress, Yin Xinjiao also had his identity token. It was just that one required active stimulation while the other was for passive protection. Be that as it may, Yang Kai had to admit that it was impossible for him to harm Yin Xinjiao even if he used the divine ability bead. He had witnessed the situation himself when Pei Wenxian's identity token was activated earlier. This was the first time he had such a hard time escaping ever since he began cultivating the Tao of Space. What vexed Yang Kai even more was that his pursuer's strength was inferior to his own. It truly was a case where a dragon could be toyed with by a shrimp in shallow waters while a tiger could be bullied by a dog if it left the mountains. I have to find a way out of this crisis, otherwise, things will end tragically for me. Just as Yang Kai was studying his surroundings, he suddenly heard a loud noise coming from a certain direction. It was accompanied by extremely violent energy fluctuations. There were masters fighting nearby. Yang Kai turned to look in that direction and it didn't take long before he heard another deafening bout of noise. The sound of explosions was mixed with the howls of a beast. Realization struck Yang Kai immediately. One of the parties involved in the fight was unquestionably a monster beast. Moreover, it could be inferred from the energy fluctuations that the level of this fight had exceeded that of the Emperor realm. There was no world force, but the energy fluctuations indicated strength that was definitely on par with open heaven realm masters. The fight in the distance felt like two black crow divine monarchs fighting each other. The strongest monster beast Yang Kai encountered ever since entering the blood monster cave heaven was only in the 5th order. Based on his estimation, a 5th order monster beast was the equivalent to an ordinary half-step open heaven realm master. In a desperate battle, a 5th order monster beast might be slightly weaker than the core disciples of the cave heavens and paradises, however, the difference would only be a small margin. If Chu Huashong were to battle a 5th order monster beast alone, she would have to pay a price even if she managed to slay the monster beast in the end. On the contrary, the turmoil of the battle had already exceeded the limits of a 5th order monster beast. It was a 6th order monster beast. Furthermore, it was most likely a fight between two 6th order monster beasts. 6th order monster beasts were not something the cultivators who entered the blood monster cave heaven could fight alone. After all, they were capable of exerting strength on par with that of a low-rank open heaven realm master. As for the 7th order monster beasts, Yang Kai could not make an inference. Looking in the direction of the commotion, Yang Kai grit his teeth and rushed towards it with Chu Huashong in his arms. The current situation could not get any worse. The only way he could survive was to seek life by crossing the gates of death. Yin Xinjiao clearly realized what Yang Kai was planning and the look in his eyes turned cold and he shouted, "Stop him." The other two Xian Yuan cave heaven disciples accompanying him were speechless when they heard those words. You can't even stop him yourself. How are we supposed to stop him? Even so, they chased after Yang Kai with all their might. On the other hand, Yang Kai forced himself to take a deep breath and used instantaneous movement once more. He opened up the distance between him and his pursuers while steadily approaching the place of the battle. After running for a few hundred kilometers, a bright golden light suddenly appeared in Yang Kai's field of vision. He looked up and inhaled a sharp breath of cold air. Now that he was here, he could finally see what kind of monster beasts were fighting each other. One of them seemed to be a gorilla while the other was a wolf. Be that as it may, Both the gorilla and the wolf had bodies that were several tens of meters tall, making them incredibly huge. Furthermore, both of them were gleaming with a dazzling golden light, and every movement they made revealed great power. These were clearly two sixth-order metal element monster beasts. The metal element power was incomparably sharp and radiated in all directions during their battle, riddling the mountain peaks nearby with countless gaping holes. Many of the shorter peaks were even razed to the ground. The two sixth-order metal element monster beasts looked evenly matched. Despite struggling hard against each other, it was impossible to tell who was holding the upper hand in the battle. That was not all. Both the monster beasts were also wounded and drenched in blood. Not to mention, their bodies were covered in countless wounds that had long since healed. This fight seemed to have taken place many times before in the past. It would seem that these two monster beasts were incompatible enemies, thus, they had been continuously fighting each other in this blood monster cave heaven for countless years. Their fight would not stop until one party was dead. Yang Kai couldn't help feeling shocked when he felt the energy fluctuations from the fight between these two. These two monster beasts are not ordinary sixth-order monster beasts. They are probably at the peak of the sixth order, otherwise, it is impossible for them to cause such widespread damage. Despite the dangerous situation, Yang Kai carried Chu Hua Shong on his back and charged straight into the middle of the battle between these two huge monster beasts. He watched as the wolf came lunging straight at the gorilla's neck while the gorilla lifted one arm to block the wolf's gigantic maw. Meanwhile, the gorilla lifted its other arm, wrapped in dense metal element power, and sliced towards the wolf's abdomen. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. Be it the gorilla or the wolf, both parties howled in agony. The wolf backed away, chewing on a piece of the gorilla's flesh in its mouth. Similarly, the sharp metal element power had sliced a bloody gash across its abdomen. The two monster beasts stood thousands of meters apart and glared at each other across the distance. All of a sudden, they turned around in unison and looked in Yang Kai's direction with vigilant expressions. It was obvious that they noticed his presence. Yang Kai did not dare to be careless and hurriedly drew upon the power of his dragon source to reveal his Dragon Clan aura. Although these two monster beasts looked like they were unrelated to the Dragon Clan, they were still monster beasts. As the head of the divine spirits, the Dragon Clan's aura could act as a deterrent for almost all monster beasts. The gorilla immediately let out a roar. Likewise, the wolf bared its fangs at Yang Kai. The two enormous monster beasts were unhappy that Yang Kai's arrival had interrupted their life-and-death struggle. Even so, Yang Kai showed no fear and rushed straight at them. He held Chu Hua Shong up with one hand and took out the proprietress divine ability bead with his other, holding it up high above his head. Both the gazes of the gorilla and the wolf were immediately drawn towards the divine ability bead. The two enormous monster beasts could instinctively sense that the tiny bead contained terrifying power. Thus, they both took a few steps back while looking extremely grim. Yang Kai breathed a sigh of relief at the sight. He was afraid that the two monster beasts would attack him out of rage. If that was the case, then he had no choice but to activate the divine ability bead. That would mean that he was forced to use his final trump card in this place. It was a huge loss that was not worth the benefits. Fortunately, the sentience of the two monster beasts was not that low. They could tell that Yang Kai was a tough opponent, so they only watched him warily and did not do anything else. Atop the mountains, a majestic monster chi permeated the air. The two enormous monster beasts were facing each other as Yang Kai slipped between them to stand right in the middle of their standoff and breathed out heavily. He was in no hurry to leave. Since these two monster beasts were mortal enemies, they would not recklessly attack him, as that would only give their opponent an advantage that could be exploited. At this moment, Yang Kai was standing right on the balance point between them. It might look dangerous, but it was actually fairly safe. It was like standing in the eye of the storm. Yang Kai then turned around, his gaze becoming incredibly chilly. Asterisk shua shua shua. Asterisk 3 bursts of noise, like something cutting through the air, rang out before the figures of Yin Xinjiao and the others appeared and stopped nearby. Yin Xinjiao furrowed his brow deeply, glancing at the gorilla and the wolf. The depths of his gaze were overflowing with fear. Yang Kai had the courage to stand between these two monster beasts, but he did not. He did not dare to rashly attack Yang Kai either. He was as good as dead if the two monster beasts misunderstood his intentions. Yin Xinjiao. Yang Kai calmly stared forward. This Yang will not forget what you did today. I will definitely pay you back 100 times over for this. Yin Xinjiao was silent. Besides, there was no point in saying anything in this situation. He could only hate the fact that he failed to catch Yang Kai in time. Otherwise, how could he tolerate such impertinence? Marshall Peak, Chapter 4265, Blood Monster Natives. After Yang Kai finished speaking, he carried Chu Hua Shong on his back once more and took several steps forward without even bothering to turn around. Excuse me. Please continue your fight. Asterisk hong hong hong, star. Earth-shaking noises rang out once more from behind him. It was the gorilla and the wolf continuing their vicious battle. Yin Xinjiao nearly coughed up blood at the sight because while these two beasts were fighting between themselves, their battlefield was gradually moving towards him. Run! He shouted and hurriedly escaped with his two junior brothers in tow. They quickly traveled across hundreds of kilometers before searching for a way around to continue their pursuit. Nevertheless, he knew that it would be difficult for him to trace Yang Kai's whereabouts again after this delay. At this moment, Yang Kai was desperately running with Chu Hua Shong on his back. Although he had borrowed the two powerful sixth-order monster beasts to temporarily get away from Yin Xinjiao and the others, he was certain the other party would not give up so easily, so he had to continue fleeing for his life. As he ran, he suddenly had the feeling that the terrain in this place was somewhat familiar. It vaguely felt like he had seen it before. After pondering deeply for a bit, the realization struck him all of a sudden. He quickly stopped in his tracks and took out an animal skin map from his space ring. Studying the map carefully and comparing the places he passed by with the places marked on the map, he couldn't help feeling surprised. Isn't this the route marked on the map? This animal skin map was something he obtained from the first cultivator he encountered in this place. The cultivator had tried to ambush him in the swamp when he first entered the blood monster cave heaven, only to be ambushed himself by a toad monster beast. At the time, Yang Kai had studied the map and discovered that it was probably part of a route in the blood monster cave heaven. It was just that he had no idea what was waiting for him at the final destination. Yang Kai originally planned to check out this place as the map looked ancient and might just lead to some hidden treasure. It was just that he met Bu Lianzhong and the others along the way. Afterward, he encountered blood monster divine monarch's Tao of blood inheritance and was delayed as a result. Who could have known that he would arrive at the route marked on the map by accident whilst fleeing for his life? Taking a good look around, he found that the final destination marked on the map was located not far away from here. It would take him another 4 hours at most to arrive, so his eyes flashed in anticipation. Putting the map away, he headed in the indicated direction. He was not going there in search of treasure though, rather, both he and Chu Hua Shong were currently in a condition where they were in dire need of a safe place to recuperate from their wounds. Regardless of whether the final destination turned out to be a hidden treasury or something else, it would surely be well hidden. 4 hours later, Yang Kai arrived in front of an enormous lake. He took out the map, checked his location, and confirmed that this was indeed the final destination, but he just stared at the lake with a speechless expression. What am I supposed to do if this is the final destination? The reason he strove so hard to come here was to find a place to hide and recuperate from his injuries. However, the terrain around the lake was completely unobstructed. Forget being chased by Yin Xinjiao and the others, even encountering a monster beast here would be troublesome. Yang Kai angrily put the map away. At this moment, he could only conceal himself within the sealed world bead and hide the sealed world bead in a secluded place. It was not as if he had not considered hiding inside the sealed world bead earlier, it was just that every corner of the blood monster cave heaven was fraught with danger. It would be perilous if the sealed world bead was discovered by a cultivator or a monster beast. This lake turned out to be a pretty good spot though. He could sink the sealed world bead into the lake, assuming that there were no ferocious monster beasts swimming inside of it. Upon considering all this, Yang Kai felt slightly better. His efforts to travel here were not completely in vain. He walked over to the edge of the lake and swept his divine sense out to investigate the situation. The next moment though, his expression changed drastically. There was something strange about this lake. If he looked with his eyes, The lake was incredibly realistic. Light shimmered on its surface in a perfectly natural manner. However, he noticed something strange about it when using his divine sense to probe it. There's a spirit array here. The lake is actually an extremely brilliant and sophisticated illusion array. The lake does not exist at all. Yang Kai had only just figured this out when a black shadow suddenly came leaping at him from the surface of the lake. The shadow blocked out the sky and loomed over him. He was startled. Just as he was about to flutter backward, a chill ran down his back at that very moment. Caught unguarded, he hurriedly turned around with a roar and viciously smashed his palm forward. There was a loud explosion and his palm seemed to strike a person, drawing a grunt of pain from their lips. Then, a ghostly figure appeared in his field of vision. What he sent flying turned out to be a man with short stature. The man looked like he had seen a ghost. It seemed that he had not expected Yang Kai to be so strong. After all, Yang Kai looked to be severely injured. Who could have expected that he would not be Yang Kai's opponent even when the latter was in such a state? Nevertheless, this short man had achieved his goal. Yang Kai was pushed back by the force of the impact and involuntarily staggered, only to fall headfirst into the black shadow coming from the lake. Immediately after that, he felt a mighty restraining force wrapping around him from all directions, trapping both him and Chu Huashong, who was lying in his arms, together. What came leaping out at him from the surface of the lake turned out to be a large net. At this moment, he and Chu Huashong had clearly fallen into an artifact trap. The large net tightened rapidly, causing him to feel extremely uncomfortable. That brat is tough. Quick! Use the firm yuan nail. The short man who was sent flying by Yang Kai earlier shouted. Kai Kai Kai. Several cold lights came flying over and Yang Kai felt a slight pain in his body when they stabbed into his body. Following that, he stopped struggling against the net with a look of surprise. The so-called firm yuan nail turned out to be a strange artifact that could restrain the qi in a cultivator's body. From what Yang Kai could tell, there was a cold force seeping into his body that sealed his meridians and caused his strength to become obstructed. Yang Kai hurriedly surged the power in his Dao seal to let the Golden Crow's true fire course through his veins, and the firm yuan nails were immediately burned to ashes, allowing his qi to flow smoothly again. Star. More than 10 figures landed from all directions, surrounding him in the middle, but Yang Kai remained calm. Carrying Chu Huashong in his arms, he glared at his surroundings coldly. If these people believe that my strength has been sealed by the firm yuan nail, then they are in for a rude surprise. Nevertheless, what piqued his curiosity was that these people seemed to have no intention of killing him. Be it the restraining net or the firm yuan nails, they were both only meant to subdue their enemies. Even the short man who attacked him from behind was only attempting to force him into the large net. These people had not displayed any murderous intent from the start. Who are these people? Yang Kai initially assumed that they were the disciples of some random sect. However, it did not seem likely now that he had taken a good look at them. That was because they were dressed strangely, slightly differently from everything he had seen before. The young man in the lead was charismatic and handsome with a jade-like face. As he turned to glance at the short man, he asked, "Are you okay?" The short man shook his head. "His paltry strength is not enough to harm me." The young man coldly snorted, "That guy is severely injured. Did you think you'd be safe otherwise?" The short man looked unconvinced. "I didn't use my full strength either." The young man ignored the short man and swept his gaze over Yang Kai, an outer world visitor. "Huh?" Yang Kai frowned, not quite understanding the question. The young man pointed at the sky. "Are you from the outside world?" Yang Kai asked curiously, "Aren't you?" As soon as the words left his mouth, he suddenly recalled something. The proprietress once mentioned that the Blood Monster Cave Heaven not only contained monster beasts but also some native Blood Monster Divine Monarch had placed these people into his small universe so that they could thrive and reproduce in order to strengthen the vitality of his small universe. The small universe of a high-rank open heaven realm master would transform from ethereal to corporeal and become essentially no different from a genuine universe world, so it was capable of sustaining living creatures. For that reason, the small universes of many high-rank open heaven realm masters would contain living creatures in them. It was just that these living creatures were bound by certain restraints and could never advance into the open heaven realm, not unless they could somehow escape the small universe they lived in. Could it be that these people in front of me are the natives of the blood monster cave heaven? That must be it. No wonder they are dressed differently from those of us from the outside. Upon realizing this, Yang Kai immediately nodded in response. That's right. My companion and I both came from the outside world. The other party did not seem to be malicious, so he had no reason to make things difficult for himself. Besides, he had only just escaped from the clutches of two different enemies, so he truly could not afford to fight another battle at the moment. What he needed was a good rest to heal from his injuries. Has it been 200 years already? The young man muttered under his breath and looked up at Yang Kai. Don't be scared. We won't kill you, but you will need to come with us. Yang Kai retorted in his heart. I'm not scared. In any case, the other party did not seem to be malicious, so it wouldn't hurt to follow them. He could also take the chance to go to where these people were located to have a good rest. It was not difficult for him to recover, but the main issue was Chu Hua Shong. Her injuries this time were rather severe. While the young man was speaking, he raised his hand and retrieved the large net. However, he said nothing about the firm yuan nails inside Yang Kai's body. In his opinion, Yang Kai couldn't even think about escaping as long as the firm yuan nails were there. The group of 10 or so people immediately escorted Yang Kai towards the lake. The young man waved the token in his hand and a burst of light flashed across the surface of the lake. Following that, ripples spread across the space in front of them and a city came into view. Yang Kai was slightly taken aback by the sight. Although he had discerned that the lake was an illusion array, he never imagined that an entire city was hidden behind it. I brought Chu Hua Shong right to the gates of their city. No wonder they discovered my presence. At this point, he finally understood something. The place marked on the animal skin map that he obtained from somebody else's space ring was this city. It was not some sort of hidden treasure trove. The person in question probably obtained the map from somewhere else and had no idea about the mysteries behind this place. If that person had found his way here, he would definitely be facing the same situation as what Yang Kai was experiencing right now. Upon walking into the city, Yang Kai discovered that it was not very large, probably capable of accommodating a few thousand people at most. Great walls surrounded the entire city, all of them equipped with various large-scale ballista-like artifacts. There were also a few artifacts somewhat similar to the cannons of a starship. Furthermore, the sturdy city walls were covered in bloodstains that had turned black with time. Parts of the city walls had collapsed and people were working on repairing them. This place was clearly not some sort of paradise, as there were various signs that it was constantly under attack. It was no wonder that they placed an illusion array on the outside to confuse one's sight. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4266, Heartless Tao. When they walked through the city gates, one of the cultivators on guard noticed the young man and hurriedly cupped his fists in greeting. Big Brother Wu Xin. One of the younger cultivators laughed. Big Brother Wu Xin, you truly are amazing. You captured them so easily. Are these two people from Emerald Thunder City? The young man shook his head. No. They are Outer World visitors. Outer World visitors. Everybody looked stunned to hear those words and curiously studied Yang Kai with a measuring gaze. Although they lived in the blood monster cave heaven, they had all heard their elders talking about the Outer World visitors. It was said that every few hundred years, a group of people would enter this world from the outside before disappearing after some time. Nevertheless, it was not until today that many of them saw what an outer world visitor looked like for the first time. They discovered that the outer world visitors were not much different from themselves. Moreover, this man was covered in wounds, so it was obvious that he had fought recently. On the other hand, the woman was unconscious. Her complexion was pale and her aura was weak. That's enough. Guard this place carefully. The young man waved his hands to dismiss the others before leading the group into the city. The streets in the city were very spacious with row upon row of houses located in the surroundings. Yang Kai looked around while walking but did not notice anything special about this place. It looked no different from the cities that could be found everywhere in the outside world. Under the guidance of the young man, They headed straight towards the building in the middle of the city. This place was most likely the city lord's mansion. The young man contacted somebody once they arrived and gave a brief report about the situation before requesting that this matter be reported to the city lord so that they could decide on how to deal with Yang Kai. That person immediately entered the city lord's mansion. However, he soon came back out with a frown on his face. Senior brother Fan, the city lord is currently in retreat. She previously ordered that she was not to be disturbed unless it was for an important matter. What would you? Similarly, Fan Wuxin frowned upon hearing those words and only spoke up after pondering in silence for a bit. In that case, please place these two in custody for now. We can discuss this matter again once the city lord comes out of retreat. Many thanks, senior brother Fan. That person cupped his fists. It didn't take long for Fan Wuxin to bring Yang Kai to an underground prison where he gestured with his head, "Get in." Yang Kai glanced at Fan Wuxin and said nothing. Carrying Chu Hua Shong in his arms, he squeezed into the prison. He had no intention of arguing with the other party as he was currently a prisoner. Besides, the prison might be on the smaller side, but there were no strange odors. It was also very clean and even had a small bed inside. Fan Wuxin stood at the door of the prison cell and said, "Please make do with this place for a few days. The city lord will meet you after she comes out of retreat." Yang Kai did not respond. His most pressing concern was treating his wounds. Once he had recovered, nobody in this small city would be able to lift a finger against him. Therefore, there was nothing to be worried about. More importantly, the other party believed that he was helpless after being restrained by the firm yuan nail, not realizing that he was not affected in the slightest. Fan Wuxin was about to turn and leave when the look in his eyes suddenly changed. He lowered his head and glanced in the direction of Yang Kai's waist. Then, he reached out his hand and grabbed the wooden token hanging there. After taking a closer look at the token, he asked curiously, "Where did you get this?" This token was something the proprietress had given to Yang Kai. Back at the palace in the middle of the lake, Yang Kai had made a bluff and hung this token on his waist to frighten Black Crow Divine Monarch. He had been fleeing for his life with Chu Hua Shong since then, so he had not had the time to store it away. Judging by the way Fan Wuxin spoke, it would seem that he recognized the token. Yang Kai's eyes flashed for a moment, but without answering the question, he countered with one of his own, "What is this token?" Fan Wuxin glanced at Yang Kai deeply. Frowning, he did not say anything more. He closed the door and turned to leave without returning the token to Yang Kai. Yang Kai did not ask for the token back. That was something the proprietress had given him, so he could not lose the token so easily. He would just have to retrieve it once he recovered from his injuries. Putting Chu Hua Shong on the small bed, Yang Kai finally let out a shallow breath of relief. This trip to the Blood Monster Cave Heaven had completely exhausted him. Aside from the first few days where things were relatively peaceful, he was first hunted by Black Crow Divine Monarch and subsequently chased by Yin Xinjiao. And now, he was being imprisoned in this place. It could be said that his entire journey had been full of ups and downs. Fortunately, he would finally have some peace for the next few days. With his regenerative abilities, he should be able to recover most of his strength in short order. He placed his hand on Chu Hua Shong's wrist to check the condition of her injuries, but the results made him frown. Her injuries were quite severe and her strength was almost completely exhausted. It was obvious that she had struggled desperately to escape from Yin Xinjiao during the 2 days that he was unconscious. Taking out some spirit pills, he ate some himself before stuffing the rest into her mouth. The bed was too small and could only accommodate one person, therefore, Yang Kai flipped himself onto the bed and sat cross-legged at its head. He then placed Chu Hua Shong's head on his lap and held her wrist with one hand. Activating the wood element power in his Dao seal, he poured the pure energy into her body while simultaneously treating his own injuries. The wood element power condensed from the essence of the immortal tree contained astonishing healing effects, and in less than an hour, Chu Hua Shong groaned softly and her lashes trembled slightly. "Senior Sister Chu," Yang Kai called out softly. Chu Hua Shong's long lashes fluttered harder and after a long while, she slowly opened her eyes and immediately looked up to see Yang Kai looking down at her. Blinking, she asked, "Junior brother, are we dead?" "No. We're alive and well." He smiled. No wonder it hurts so much. She forced a smile, but her complexion was still as pale as a sheet of paper. Yang Kai shook his head and chided lightly, "Since you're awake, senior sister, then don't get distracted. Your top priority should be to treat your injuries." Nodding weakly, she closed her eyes and began circulating some kind of secret art. She could clearly sense a powerful and energetic force flowing into her body through Yang Kai's palm. Wherever that energy flowed, her injuries healed at an unimaginable speed. She initially thought that it would take her 1 or 2 months just to recover. However, judging by the current situation, it would not take longer than a few days at most. Hence, she was secretly amazed at how high the order of the wood element power Yang Kai must have condensed was. She might not have condensed a 7th-order element herself, but she was certain that what she was experiencing was not something a 7th-order power could accomplish. A 7th-order wood element would simply not have such astonishing regenerative properties. Is it an 8th-order? Or even a 9th-order? Just what did junior brother condense for him to obtain such a horrifyingly powerful wood element power? Another half a day passed and her cheeks were now much rosier than before while her aura had stabilized somewhat. It was not until this moment that she realized she had been sleeping on Yang Kai's lap all this while. Moreover, they were even sharing a small bed inside a tiny stone room. "Junior brother, what is this place?" she asked curiously. He answered, "Inside a city." "A city? En?" He nodded. "There are many natives inside the blood monster cave heaven, and this place is one of the cities where a group of natives reside. We were captured and brought back here." "Then, aren't we prisoners?" she exclaimed in surprise. "Just what happened after I fell unconscious? How did we get captured by the natives?" "I guess." Yang Kai chuckled. "What do we do now?" Her expression changed. "Who knows whether these natives have any malicious intentions towards us? Since we're already here, then we might as well see how things play out. Let's just focus on recovering for now. What can they do to us once we are fully healed?" She frowned and anxiously said, "I'm worried that they might do something to us before we recover completely. No, we can't just do nothing and wait for death. Junior brother, please cultivate with me." Yang Kai's eyes bulged as he stared at her, feeling speechless. "Senior sister, you're becoming delirious again." She immediately retorted, "Don't you dare knock me out again." The last time she had mentioned something similar, Yang Kai had knocked her unconscious without any hesitation. Therefore, she immediately became vigilant upon hearing those words. Yang Kai was truly exasperated as he grumbled, "What does our current situation have to do with cultivating together? As a yin-yang cave heaven disciple, I have been cultivating a yin-yang secret technique since I was young. If we engage in yin-yang union cultivation, then we can recover even faster. Even without doing that, our recovery is not slow." Yang Kai chuckled. "But, time is of the essence right now, junior brother." Yang Kai fell silent for a moment before he sternly replied, "Senior sister, yin-yang union cultivation should only be done between people who are deeply in love with one another. This is a major life event, you should think this over carefully." "Of course, I know that. Junior brother, you are a great candidate." She stared at him with clear eyes. It was just that her charming beauty in addition to her weakened state made her even more alluring than ever. He was stared at so intently that he couldn't help feeling uncomfortable. Thus, he shifted his gaze away and muttered, "Including meeting here in the blood monster cave heaven, you and I have only met each other twice, senior sister. You don't know what kind of man I am. On the same note, I'm not sure what kind of character senior sister has. With such a loveless foundation, how will we blend with each other seamlessly and perform something like yin-yang union cultivation? Feelings can slowly be nurtured in the future," she said confidently. "I'm certain that you will surely fall for me once we've performed yin-yang union cultivation." Yang Kai scowled and spoke sternly, "Senior sister, I am not talking about performing yin-yang union cultivation. I am talking about your lifelong happiness. You are so beautiful and intelligent, senior sister Chu. You should find somebody who is worthy of entrusting the rest of your life to." She replied, "But, I've already found one." Yang Kai was on the verge of a mental breakdown, feeling as though he could not communicate with her at all. What he could be certain of was that she had some feelings of admiration for him, just as he did for her. But there was absolutely no love between them. How could she speak about dual cultivating together so easily? Junior brother, do you think this senior sister is a woman without morals? She suddenly asked. Why would I? He shook his head. Over the past few days of interaction, he had more or less grasped her personality. She was not a loose woman. Otherwise, she would not mention that she had never tasted a man before. With her looks, who could resist her temptation and seduction if she really put her mind to it? She broke into a wide smile. In that case, why do you refuse to cultivate with me, junior brother? The conversation went full circle and came back to this topic again, so Yang Kai countered her question with one of his own. Senior sister, why are you so insistent on cultivating with me? Chu Hua Shong paused for a moment before explaining, I'll have to find somebody sooner or later. Junior brother Yang is an outstanding man. I'll never find somebody like you again if I let you slip away. You don't understand. What I cultivate is the heartless Tao. The heartless Tao? She nodded. As a yin-yang cave heaven disciple, I must first cultivate the heart in order to advance into the open heaven realm. We can either cultivate the heartfelt Tao or the heartless Tao. And I am cultivating the latter. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4267, Elder Tan. Yang Kai frowned slightly. Although he did not know anything about the heartless Tao, the name itself made one uncomfortable. Chu Hua Shong explained, those who cultivate the heartfelt Tao have to fall in love to enter the Tao, while those who cultivate the heartless Tao have to cut off their affections to enter the Tao. But both the heartfelt Tao and the heartless Tao will eventually end up at the same destination. In the end, we will achieve the grand Tao and receive recognition as an open heaven realm master. I still don't understand how that is related to why you want to cultivate together with me, senior sister. Stupid. She rolled her eyes at him. I have to cut off my affections in order to create my own Tao. But I currently have no love to speak of. How am I supposed to cut off my affections and advance into the open heaven realm? He understood. So, you want to fall in love with me and then cut off your affections for me. That's right. She readily admitted and looked at him with a pitiful gaze. Junior brother, just think of it as doing me a favor. Yang Kai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How can there be such strange things in the world? Such a mesmerizing woman wants to cultivate together with me, but it turns out that I'm just doing her a favor. Be that as it may, it was exactly as she said before. Regardless of which Tao Yin-Yang Cave Heaven disciples cultivated, they first had to fall in love with someone. Those who cultivated the heartfelt Tao did not need to go through the trouble of cutting off their affections. On the other hand, the heartless Tao could only be cultivated by those with great perseverance, otherwise, they would experience dissonance in their cultivation if they failed to cut off their emotions. The consequences would be unimaginable. Senior sister, do you love me? Yang Kai asked. She considered the question seriously before making a pinching gesture with her fingers. A little bit. But it's not enough. It doesn't matter. I'm certain that I will fall in love with you once I cultivate together with you, junior brother. Yang Kai burst out laughing. Love between a man and woman is not quite as simple as how you put it, senior sister. She blinked. Junior brother, you seem very experienced in this field. His face flushed bright red and he quickly changed the topic. Please don't mention cultivating together again. I'm sure you will eventually find the right person for you, senior sister. It's just, that person is not me. Fine. Seeing his firm attitude, she immediately stopped talking about this matter. There were times when it was enough that she had expressed her intentions. It would have the opposite effect if she pressed too hard. Junior brother, are you willing to join Yin-Yang Cave Heaven? She abruptly changed the topic. I'll be honest with you. I actually came to the Blood Monster Cave Heaven with another task from the Master Sect. What task? Yang Kai asked curiously. Find you and ask you to join Yin-Yang Cave Heaven. She explained, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you what kind of situation you're in right now, junior brother. Although you intend to advance into the high-rank open heaven realm directly, you've stepped on too many toes in the process. The cave heavens and paradises only have two attitudes towards an existence like yours. They either want to take the cautious approach and kill you in advance, or they want to win you over into their camp. Yin-Yang Cave Heaven is part of the latter. Yang Kai understood that she must have contributed a lot for Yin-Yang Cave Heaven to willingly try to win him over to their side. All of a sudden, what Pei Wenxian mentioned in the past echoed in his ears once more. Pei Wenxian had claimed that he was not the only person in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven who wanted Yang Kai dead. It would now seem that many of the Cave Heaven and Paradise disciples in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven were tracking Yang Kai's whereabouts in order to kill him. Although I believed that you would enter the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, I never imagined that I would encounter you so quickly. It looks like you and I are destined for each other, junior brother. Chu Hua Shong laughed lightly. Yang Kai asked curiously, Senior sister, you mentioned that Yin-Yang Cave Heaven wished for me to join them. If I join Yin-Yang Cave Heaven, will they guarantee that I can advance into the high-rank open heaven realm? If he remembered correctly, the proprietress had clearly mentioned that the Cave Heavens and Paradises would not be able to accept somebody like him with peace of mind. That was because they had no way to guarantee his loyalty. Only those cultivators who were nurtured from birth could safely advance into the high-rank open heaven realm directly. It was just that cultivators like these were incredibly rare throughout the ages. Hence, the appearance of anyone who could directly break through to the high-rank open heaven realm was bound to create a huge uproar in the 3,000 worlds. It was not just because the high-rank materials were difficult to find and refine, it was also because forcefully cultivating them when one's Dao seal was not firm enough would only result in death. Even if somebody were to condense high-rank open heaven realm powers, they would face great danger when trying to split heaven and earth apart inside their body to create a small universe. Many talented cultivators who condensed high-rank elements would fail at the last moment and extinguish their souls as a result. No. She shook her head. If you join Yin-Yang Cave Heaven, you will have to advance into the 6th Order Open Heaven realm. Yang Kai was stunned. He thought that Yin-Yang Cave Heaven would be able to guarantee that he broke through to the high-rank Open Heaven realm. Who could have known that their offer came with such a condition? It was just a casual remark in the first place, but what he learned immediately made him lose all interest in Yin-Yang Cave Heaven. The 6th and 7th Order might only be one order apart, but they were fundamentally different. Nevertheless, Yang Kai finally understood why Chu Hua Shong was acting so forward and kept making those kinds of requests when he met her again this time. If he cultivated together with her, then he would undoubtedly carry Yin-Yang Cave Heaven's mark. Not only would she be able to complete the task given to her by the Master Sect, but she would also find a partner to fall in love with. It was killing two birds with one stone. Many thanks, senior sister, for being so frank with me. No matter what her original intentions towards him were, the fact that she could tell him everything without hiding anything indicated that she did not wish to harm him. Junior brother, are you unwilling? She asked. His answer was resolute. I will go forward bravely on the road beneath my feet. I have already seen the path to the high-rank open heaven realm. Even if it is narrow, muddy, and full of thorns, I will not retreat. My Dao heart will become clouded if I choose the easier road instead. Chu Hua Shong sighed softly. Junior brother, you are still a long way from advancing into the open heaven realm. Many people might have taken notice of you, but they have no intention of making a move against you yet. That is because they are people who must consider their own status. They cannot abuse their strength to crush you, otherwise, it will harm their reputation if word gets out. At the moment, they are only using their juniors to cause trouble for and suppress you. But, if they perceive you as a threat one day, they will neither hold back nor be merciful. Senior sister, can you tell me why the Cave Heavens and Paradises are so sensitive to advancing directly into the high-rank open heaven realm? Yang Kai asked. He could not understand this point no matter how hard he thought about it. He was simply cultivating his own Dao. It was not as if he was harming other people, so why did he end up in this situation for no apparent reason? Chu Hua Shong explained, I don't know if this is true as it is something I only heard about in rumors. A certain paradise once recruited a talented and promising disciple like you, junior brother. That disciple certainly lived up to expectations and advanced directly into the 7th Order Open Heaven realm and was granted an important position as a result. Subsequently, the Cave Heaven exhausted all its resources and spent thousands of years helping him advance into the 9th Order Open Heaven realm. In the Open Heaven realm, The first order is the weakest while the ninth order is the strongest. Once he reached the ninth order open heaven realm, there was practically nobody in the 3,000 worlds who was his equal. Afterward, nobody knew the reason why he suddenly had a drastic change of heart, but he went on to slaughter the entire paradise in a single day. Not only did everybody from that paradise lose their lives, but the paradise itself was destroyed. She paused for a moment and highlighted, following those events, the masters of the various cave heavens and paradises who were allies of the previous paradise joined together to hunt him down. Unfortunately, the force sent to subdue him was also wiped out. Moreover, it would seem that this incident caused that person to greatly despise the various cave heavens and paradises. He deliberately went on to wreak havoc for the cave heavens and paradises. For a time, the entire 3,000 worlds was plunged into a reign of terror. All 36 cave heavens and 72 paradises were swept up in this incident. This matter lasted for several hundreds of years. Only then was that person besieged to death. Unfortunately, all the cave heavens and paradises took severe damage as a result. Having learned from the lessons of the past, the current cave heavens and paradises tend to pay great attention to those who advance directly into the high-rank open heaven realm, lest the tragedy repeat itself. She carried on, at present, there exists a desolate territory where the space is shattered and the vitality is gone. That is where the final battle took place in the past. It is said that several hundred high-rank open heaven realm masters alone died in that battle. It is impossible to calculate how many mid-rank open heaven realm masters and low-rank open heaven realm masters died as well. Even though so many years have passed, that great territory is still fraught with dangers. The power of all sorts of divine abilities remains. No matter how powerful you are, nobody who enters that place has returned alive. The desolate territory was a battlefield in the past. Yang Kai was astonished. In order to locate the star boundary, he once scoured the entire universe chart. Needless to say, he had noticed the existence of the desolate territory. He had not given much thought to this matter at the time and only felt curious as to why there was nothing marked within that desolate territory. Only now did he learn that the desolate territory had such history behind it. Nevertheless, he couldn't help looking down on the cave heavens and paradises that were so sensitive and stressed about something that occurred in the distant past. Instead of guarding against others, why don't they strengthen themselves instead? Junior brother, won't you reconsider? Chu Hua Shong glanced at him pitifully, but her expression was filled with anticipation. He reached out and flicked her on the forehead, focus on healing. Stop talking so much. She clutched at her forehead and rolled her eyes in frustration. As time passed, their injuries gradually healed and they were no longer as weak as before. Inside the City Lord's mansion, Fan Wuxin took out the wooden token that he obtained from Yang Kai and played with it. He was extremely curious as the pattern on the wooden token was very familiar to him. It was none other than the insignia of Abundance City. But, why does a wooden token brought in by an outer world visitor have Abundance City's insignia on it? Not to mention, the appearance of this wooden token indicates that it is from hundreds or even thousands of years ago. Unable to solve this puzzling question, Fan Wuxin asked several others about this wooden token. Unfortunately, nobody knew anything either. Perhaps, I will only learn the truth once the City Lord comes out of retreat. Just as he was about to put the wooden token away, he suddenly felt a gust of wind brushing against him. Immediately after that, a beardless middle-aged man with a fair face appeared in front of him. Fan Wuxin hurriedly straightened up and cupped his fist. Elder Tan. The person who just arrived was none other than Tan Luo Xing, one of the 5 great elders of the Abundance City. He was very powerful and held great authority. Like Tan Luo Xing, Fan Wuxin had also condensed the 5th order open heaven realm elements. However, the other party was older than him by several thousands of years. If it really came down to a fight, Fan Wuxin was certain that Tan Luo Xing could take his life within 100 moves. Deacon Fan. Tan Luo Xing nodded in acknowledgement. I heard you were asking about the origins of a wooden token. Indeed. Fan Wuxin nodded. Is that it? Can I have a look? Tan Luo Xing cast his gaze in the direction of Fan Wuxin's hands. Please have a look, Elder Tan. Fan Wuxin immediately handed the wooden token over. While Tan Luoxing was investigating the wooden token, Fan Wuxin briefly recounted the story about how he had captured Yang Kai and Chu Huashong. Tan Luoxing's eyes flashed and he narrowed his eyes slightly. Are they really outer world visitors? Yes, they are outer world visitors. Fan Wuxin nodded in confirmation. Elder Tan, do you recognize this wooden token? Do you know what it is? Why does it have Abundant City's insignia? Marshall Peak, Chapter 4268. What did you come back here for? I know a little bit, but I will only know whether or not it's as I believe once I meet the person in question. Tan Luoxing clenched the wooden token in his hand and looked up. Where are those two right now? Fan Wuxin said, the woman is unconscious due to severe injuries while the man is sealed by the firm yuan nails. They are currently being imprisoned in the dungeon. I'll go and take a look. After saying that, Tan Luoxing turned around and left. In the end, he didn't say anything about the wooden token. Although Fan Wuxin was annoyed, he could not inquire further into the matter. After ruminating over something for a bit, he got up and followed Tan Luoxing. Inside the dungeon, Yang Kai was adjusting his breathing when he abruptly opened his eyes and sent a transmission to Chu Huashong. Be careful, senior sister. Someone is coming. Chu Huashong hurriedly sat up at those words, her bright eyes watching the door of the prison vigilantly. All of a sudden, she felt Yang Kai's aura weaken considerably. She immediately understood his intentions and restrained her own energy, pretending that she was still seriously injured and on the verge of death, her complexion as pale as could be. The two of them had only just finished preparing their ruse when a voice rang out from outside the door. Greetings, Elder Tan. Another person grunted faintly in response. Are the two people that Deacon Fan captured inside? Yes. Open the door. I'm going in to take a look. Yes. Soon, the door of the prison cell opened and a beardless middle-aged man with a fair face walked in. His expression was gloomy and slightly anxious. When he looked up and saw Yang Kai, he immediately paused at the door of the cell and a hint of astonishment flashed across his eyes before he blurted out, "It's you." "Huh?" Yang Kai stared at the man suspiciously. What is he talking about? Do we know each other? So many years have passed. What did you come back here for? The middle-aged man shouted again. Yang Kai was utterly confused. He had no idea what the middle-aged man was talking about. Just as Yang Kai was about to inquire about the situation, the middle-aged man's expression suddenly turned savage and he gave a low laugh. It doesn't matter. Since you came back, die. Whilst saying so, he raised a hand and pushed his palm towards Yang Kai as the power of the five elements swirled around him. From the strength of his attack, he had obviously condensed fifth-order open heaven realm elements. Moreover, he must have been immersed in this realm for many years because his control over his five-element powers was incredibly refined and potent. Among all the other half-step open heaven realm masters that Yang Kai had met so far, none of them could surpass this man in this regard. Moreover, this attack was very aggressive and overflowing with murderous intent. It was obvious that the middle-aged man intended to take Yang Kai's life. Yang Kai immediately lost his temper. He had never met this man before, so why was he trying to kill him at their first meeting? If he had not neutralized the firm yuan nails that were placed on him earlier, Yang Kai would have been helpless in the face of this attack. Fortunately, he was no longer bound by such restraints. Lifting his hand, Yang Kai threw his own palm forward while drawing the powers of his Dao seal. His clothes flapped about wildly, making rustling noises even though there was no wind. Hong, star. Yang Kai's figure swayed slightly and the small bed under him immediately shattered into dust. On the other hand, the middle-aged man's expression changed drastically as he was sent flying backward, coughing up a mouthful of fresh blood in midair. The violent force from their exchange swirled and swept out in all directions. The dungeon was unable to withstand the impact and came crashing down with a loud rumble. Let's go. Yang Kai grabbed Chu Huashong's waist with one hand and shot upward. At this moment, Fan Wuxin was hurrying towards the dungeon, but before he could even reach the entrance, he suddenly heard a violent explosion coming from below. It was followed by the distinctive sounds of battle. He was startled, not knowing what was going on. Before he could understand the situation, The ground collapsed without warning and two figures flashed out from the opening to land not far away from him. Turning around to look in that direction, Fan Wuxin was shocked by the sight that greeted him. Isn't that man and woman the two outer world visitors whom I captured and brought back recently? When he captured them, the woman had been seriously injured and unconscious as a result. Furthermore, he had planted the firm yuan nails in that man himself. Logically speaking, it was impossible for the other party to exert any strength at this moment, but looking at Yang Kai's abundant vitality and violent qi, there were no traces of weakness at all. Hong hong hong. More figures emerged from below, all of them covered in dust. One of them was pale-faced and had blood trickling out of the corners of his mouth. Fan Wuxin cried out in shock, "Elder Tan." The person who seemed to be injured was none other than Tan Luoxing, who had parted ways with him earlier. Judging by Tan Luoxing's appearance, Fan Wuxin could tell that the former had been injured by the outer world visitor. Thus, he couldn't help feeling horrified by the discovery. He had a clear understanding of just how strong Tan Luoxing was. The number of people in Abundant City who could win against Tan Luoxing could be counted on one hand. Besides, it had not been long since they separated. How did Tan Luoxing get wounded so quickly? How strong is this outer world visitor for him to do something like this in such a short period of time? Cough. Cough, cough. Tan Luoxing coughed lightly and spat out the blood in his mouth. Staring at Yang Kai with a mixture of shock and horror, he shouted furiously, "This person is not an outer world visitor. He is a spy from Emerald Thunder City. Don't let him escape." When that order rang out, a group of people immediately gathered around from all directions. Fan Wuxin was stunned. How did these two get tangled up with Emerald Thunder City? Could it be that I was mistaken previously? Are they not outer world visitors but actual spies? Elder Tan must have his own reasons for saying this, but he had no time to think. Hurriedly summoning his long sword, he joined the encirclement. Meanwhile, Yang Kai was holding Chu Hua Shong by the waist with one hand, his expression gloomy. He had willingly let himself be captured in this place because he had urgently needed to find a quiet spot to recuperate from his injuries. Who could have known that he would be accused of being a spy and attacked before he had the chance to recover completely? It was only natural that he was in a foul mood. Although he had yet to recover fully at the moment, he was no longer as weak as he was before. It was true that he could not exert his complete strength, but it was not a problem for him to fight at 80% of his maximum. For that reason, he was not scared in the slightest even though a lot of people were gathering around. It was just that this place was the enemy's territory, so it would be rather troublesome if it came down to a fight. Therefore, he turned to look at the middle-aged man coldly and asked, Are you misunderstanding something?" "Misunderstanding?" Tan Luoxing snarled, "Even if you turned into ashes, I would still be able to recognize you. What do you mean by misunderstanding? What are you all doing? Kill him." Following his command, more than 10 figures lunged at Yang Kai from all directions. Every one of them used killing moves as their energy swirled wildly around them. Seeing that, Yang Kai did not dare to underestimate them. He lifted his hand and summoned the Azure Dragon Spear into his grip. A bright light flashed, seemingly shocking the entire world as spear shadows flew in all directions. Numerous cries of agony rang out as the people who threw themselves at Yang Kai were all thrown backwards. Each one of them collapsed to the ground, bleeding profusely. The others in the surroundings were shocked by the sight. Just who the hell is this guy? How is he so fierce? Is he really a spy from Emerald Thunder City? It was only a short moment of hesitation, but Yang Kai had already broken out of the encirclement during that time. Everywhere he passed, a reign of terror was left in his wake. Fan Wuxin was completely dumbfounded as a chill ran down from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. He had not realized just how powerful this man was when he first led his men to capture these two people. If this man had revealed such ability at that time, he and his men would not have been able to return alive. It was obvious that the other party had been terribly injured earlier but had recovered somewhat now. "Watch out, Deacon Fan." A shout broke Fan Wuxin out of his daze. He looked up and felt fear flooding his heart. The outer world visitor was charging straight in his direction, sending numerous figures flying along the way. Fresh blood splattered across the skies and screams reverberated through the air. Fan Wuxin quickly focused himself. With death looming right before his eyes, he slashed his sword wildly, sending out a torrent of sword waves towards the enemy. There seemed to be no end to the sounds of the sword waves slicing through the air, completely obscuring the figure of the outer world visitor. Did I get him? Fan Wuxin frowned, still feeling extremely uneasy. Hong, star. It was as if a giant ominous beast had rushed out from ancient history. When the sword waves shattered, Fan Wuxin saw a spear rapidly enlarging in front of his eyes. Oh, no! He wanted to avoid the attack, but that spear seemed to block out all the light in front of him. There was no way for him to dodge. I'm going to die. The moment that thought appeared, Fan Wuxin felt an intense pain coming from somewhere in his body and immediately collapsed to the ground. A short while later, though, he was stunned to discover that he was still breathing. Looking down, he saw that he was covered in blood and there was a wound at his waist area that had penetrated right through his body. Nevertheless, considering his half-step open heaven realm cultivation, such an injury could be considered neither light nor serious because his vitals had not been destroyed. I can't believe I'm not dead. Did he miss? All of a sudden, a series of groaning sounds entered Fan Wuxin's ears. Looking up, he was stunned by the sight before him. All the people who were defeated by the outer world visitor earlier were injured and bleeding, but not one of them had died. After witnessing this scene, how could Fan Wuxin not understand? The other party had not missed, rather, he had held back. He had no intention of killing anybody and was simply fighting back and defending himself. Fan Wuxin looked around once more and saw countless cultivators of Abundant City continuing to besiege the outer world visitor. However, none of them could even slow him down. Yang Kai left a path of destruction everywhere he went, mowing down his opponents as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. On the other hand, the cultivators of Abundant City were cut down like wheat in a storm, collapsing to the ground one after another. Is he really human? Fan Wuxin looked dumbstruck. Kill him. Tan Luo Xing roared furiously with a savage expression as he, too, charged in the direction where Yang Kai was located. Fan Wuxin hurriedly followed suit after circulating his strength to staunch his bleeding. There was no other choice. He was the one who captured these people in the first place, so he could not just leave them be. Although the other party was still showing mercy, Fan Wuxin could not just sit around and watch as he caused such a huge commotion in Abundant City. Meanwhile, Yang Kai charged forward with his spear in hand, fighting his way through the city. He was extremely annoyed by now. It was not a pleasant experience to be besieged for no reason. Although he believed that there was a misunderstanding, he had no idea who to approach to resolve the situation. Thus, he could only fight while running. He initially wanted to find a way to leave the city, but he couldn't find the exit at all. This city was guarded by a powerful spirit array and there seemed to be no way out unless it was deactivated or opened. He had not killed any of the native cultivators here so as not to create an irresolvable grudge between the two sides. There was still room for resolving this misunderstanding as long as he did not kill anybody. On the contrary, he would have no choice but to fight to the end if he launched a slaughter. Fortunately, all the cultivators in this city were now aware of Yang Kai's strength after his astonishing display just now. Nobody dared to approach him carelessly, but there was still a large group of people surrounding him from afar no matter where he went. Even though they had him surrounded though, they were the ones gulping nervously as terror and panic filled their faces. Yang Kai held his spear in hand while Chu Huashong followed behind him at a leisurely pace. The more she watched this junior brother of hers, the deeper her impression of how extraordinary he was grew. When she thought back to the hardships and dangers that they experienced together, an indescribable and unfamiliar emotion began to blossom in her heart. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4269, Recognizing the Wrong Person. Abundant City was a complete mess. Countless cultivators were gathered around in all directions with Yang Kai at their center. Most of these cultivators looked terrified and were nervously gulping. They moved quickly with Yang Kai's every movement, maintaining a distance of several dozen meters from him at all times. Meanwhile, Yang Kai scurried around the city with Chu Hua Shong in tow. He had failed to locate the exit of this city's grand array despite searching for over an incense stick worth of time. Thus, his patience was wearing thin. He reached out a hand and space principles fluctuated before a young man appeared in his grasp. That young man had originally been standing 50 meters away from Yang Kai, but before he could realize what was going on, he felt something tightening around his neck. He looked up and saw Yang Kai staring at him with a dark expression. Screaming in fear, he instinctively tried to fight back. However, a mighty force filled the other party's palm and flooded his body, making him unable to exert any strength at all. "Where's the exit?" Yang Kai asked sullenly. Pale with fright, the young man swallowed nervously. A look of hesitation and struggle flashed across his face, but he soon closed his eyes and grit his teeth with a look that indicated he was resigned to his fate. "How brave!" Yang Kai coldly snorted. Increasing the strength in his hand slightly, he threatened the young man, "I'll ask you one last time. Where is the exit? I'll kill you if you don't talk." The young man gritted his teeth tightly together. Even though he looked extremely frightened, he refused to say a single word. Yang Kai turned to look at his surroundings. Countless pairs of eyes stared back at him, flickering with fright and anger as though he was some kind of wicked villain. He was so furious that he wanted to laugh. Lifting the young man in his hand high into the air, he snarled savagely, "Release the city's grand array and let me out. Otherwise, I will raze this entire city to the ground and leave no man alive." Nobody responded, but his words made everybody's expression change drastically. Nobody answered his demand either. It could be seen that although this city and population was not very large, they were incredibly united. Thinking about it, it was not that strange. Every corner of the Blood Monster Cave heaven was filled with danger, so if natives were not unified, it would be difficult for them to survive in this harsh environment. "Junior brother, are we really going to kill them?" Chu Hua Shong asked in a whisper. "Senior sister, please don't be impatient. Just follow me closely." She nodded and snuggled tightly against him. Afterward, Yang Kai turned his head to look at the middle-aged man who attacked him earlier. The people here called him Elder Tan. He probably holds some sway in this city. I might be able to discover the location of the Grand Array's portal from this man. When Tan Luo Xing noticed Yang Kai looking in his direction, his expression changed considerably and he subconsciously took several steps back. He had exchanged blows with Yang Kai back at the prison, which nearly resulted in his death. Therefore, he had a deep understanding of the latter's strength. This man was not somebody he could defeat. In fact, they could not stop him even after all the forces within Abundant City were mobilized. At this point, he seriously doubted that anybody in Abundant City could prevent Yang Kai from wiping out this city if so chose to. At this moment, a shadow rushed over and landed not far away from Yang Kai. It transformed into a girl that looked quite young. She was dressed like a maidservant and in addition, she had a playful and pure appearance. Upon seeing the situation within the city, the young girl revealed an expression of astonishment. Then, her beautiful eyes landed on Yang Kai. She swept a measuring gaze over his body as though trying to assess him. "Be careful, Lady Jing." "This person," Fan Wuxin shouted. After mulling for a long while, he finally added, "He is unfathomable." Lady Jing nodded lightly. Giving Yang Kai an elegant bow, she gently said, "This maid greets you, sir. What do you want?" Yang Kai glanced sideways at her. She said, "I wouldn't dare. The city lord wishes to speak with you." "The city lord?" Yang Kai squinted at the location in the middle of the city. Fan Wuxin had brought him there once, but the city lord had been in retreat at the time. That was why he and Chu Hua Shong were eventually thrown into the dungeon. "It seems that all the commotion I caused here has roused the city lord from her retreat. Nevertheless, this city lord is certainly quite an interesting woman." Even though he had made such a huge fuss in Abundant City, this person was still inviting him over for a chat. It went to show that the other party was either very generous, or was as timid as a mouse. Judging by the maid-servant's attitude, the former was more probable. Just as Yang Kai was about to nod in agreement, Tan Luo Xing suddenly shouted, "You can't. This person is a spy sent by Emerald Thunder City." Furthermore, he is very strong. If we recklessly allow him to approach the city lord, the consequences will be dire. Everybody, please work with me to kill this man to prevent any further troubles. Yang Kai was furious. Just what is wrong with this Tan Luo Xing? Why does he keep accusing me of being a spy from Emerald Thunder City? Listening to those accusations caused his murderous intent to rise, tempting him to kill this person on the spot with his spear. Lady Jing, however, smiled and refuted, Elder Tan, please watch what you say. The city lord has made her decision. What's more, if this man is as strong as you say, were he a spy sent by Emerald Thunder City, the city would be flowing with rivers of blood by this point. Nobody in Abundance City can stop him after all. However, that is not the case. While it is true that many of our people have been injured, not a single of them lost their life. It can be seen that this man has held back. I'm sure there's a misunderstanding somewhere. At least the city lord is sensible. Yang Kai nodded to himself, the rage in his heart subsiding slightly. Sir, madam, please come this way. After saying that, she turned sideways and gestured with her hand to show them the way. Chu Hua Shong blushed. I'm not a madam. It was her first time being addressed in that manner, so it felt strange to her ears. Lead the way. Yang Kai put away the azure dragon spear, released the young man in his grasp, and nodded in acknowledgement. Lady Jing looked to the side. Deacon Fan, please come with us. I heard that you are the one who brought this sir and lady back. Yes. Fan Wu Xin responded as he clutched at his waist with one hand, his complexion pale. That spot was where Yang Kai had stabbed him with his spear earlier. Even now, the bleeding has not stopped completely. Everyone, please disperse. Those who are injured should receive proper treatment for your wounds. Lady Jing waved her hands to dismiss the others before stepping forward to lead the way. On the other hand, Tan Luo Xing could only watch helplessly as Yang Kai and the others departed. He was anxious and furious, but unfortunately, it was impossible to stop them with his current strength alone. He clenched his fists and ground his teeth, knowing that he was finished the moment that person entered the city lord's mansion. He would no longer have a place in Abundance City. Staring in the direction of the city lord's mansion that held so many of his memories, he immediately flew towards his residence. The city lord's mansion was probably the largest building in Abundance City. Yang Kai and Chu Hua Shong had been here before, but they had not been able to enter at the time. Now though, they had a smooth journey under Lady Jing's guidance and soon arrived at the main hall. Lady Jing stopped outside the doors and announced, City Lord, I've brought them here. Since you're here, then please come in. A gentle voice came from within. Sir, please come this way. Lady Jing gestured forward. Yang Kai nodded and strode inside with Chu Hua Shong. Upon entering the main hall, he immediately felt a dozen or so divine senses shrouding him. He looked up and saw 4 people sitting at the head of the hall. There were 2 on each side, including both men and women. The others were hidden in the shadows, remaining alert and vigilant against him. He was not bothered by their attitudes. After all, he had caused a huge commotion in the city earlier. Even if they invited him here, it was only natural that they took some precautions. Meanwhile, the 4 people sitting in the main hall were on par with Elder Tan in terms of strength. They were probably the highest-level elders in Abundance City. Besides them, a woman dressed in imperial dress sat demurely on the head seat located at the central platform. When their gazes met, Yang Kai discovered that this woman looked to be in her 30s. Time had not left any traces on her face and her appearance was dignified, looking like a true young lady of the house. What surprised him even more was that the city lord abruptly stood up from her chair the moment their gazes met. She was not the only one to do so, as the other people sitting around them had the same reaction. All of them stood up abruptly and stared at him in shock. In addition, the city lord's eyes reddened, her breathing quickened, and her body trembled lightly. She covered her red lips with one hand. It's you. An elderly man on the left shouted. Yang Kai turned to look in that direction and studied the man, having no clue who he was. He had heard these words twice now. The first time was when Elder Tan met him, and the second was in this place. That was not all. The people here had reacted strangely when they saw him, So much so that the city lord even lost all her composure for some reason. Yang Kai frowned as various thoughts ran through his head. Have you mistaken me for somebody else? If they did not mistake him for somebody else, then how could they have these kinds of reactions? As soon as those words left his mouth, everybody stiffened in surprise. Then, they all turned to look at the city lord in unison. The city lord's eyes were red as she called out, "Tingyu, is that you?" Her voice trembled slightly, sounding weak and desolate. Like a woman calling out to her lover after waiting for many years. Her voice was filled with longing but also mixed with a trace of resentment. Upon hearing the name Tingyu, Yang Kai immediately understood what was going on. The people here had indeed mistaken him for somebody else. "Madam, are you referring to Lan Tingyu?" Yang Kai asked. Everybody was stunned once more. The city lord's tender body trembled at those words. Her figure fluttered lightly as she came to stand in front of Yang Kai. She studied him carefully while weeping softly. However, her expression became disappointed after taking a closer look at him. "You're not him." She slowly shook her head repeatedly. Turning around, she slowly walked back to her seat and sat down as though all the strength in her body was gone. Even her complexion looked lifeless. The elderly man who spoke up earlier took a good look at Yang Kai and asked suspiciously, "Are you not Lan Tingyu?" Yang Kai cupped his fist. Yang Kai greets fellow cultivators. Everybody exchanged glances with each other when they heard his greeting, while one of the women couldn't stop herself from muttering, "How can they look so alike?" Another middle-aged man said, "It's probably not Brother Lan. It has been nearly 1,000 years since we last saw Brother Lan, but this man still looks so young." Yes. What Elder Pang says makes sense. Could he be a descendant of Brother Lan's? Otherwise, how can they be so alike? The last person who abruptly voiced out a whimsical thought was a fatty. The words had just left his mouth when the woman next to him viciously stomped on his foot. The pain was so intense that he grimaced and he called out, "Why did you step on my foot?" That woman glared at the fatty fiercely and gestured upwards with her mouth. The fatty immediately fell silent and sneakily stole a glance in that direction. The city lord was staring at Yang Kai blankly, her eyes seemingly flashing with memories of the distant past. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4270, Past Events. I am not acquainted with Lan Tingyu nor have any relationship with him, Yang Kai slowly explained. He had only heard about Lan Tingyu from Yu He and the proprietress. Back when Yu He first saw him, she had also shouted out the name Tingyu. "But, you look so alike." Some people remained consumed by a sense of disbelief. Yang Kai did not say anything else. After all, he had already expressed his point to them clearly. Judging by the current situation, it would seem that Lan Tingyu had not only visited this place in the past but was also acquainted with the people here. Why else would they have mistaken him for Lan Tingyu when they first saw him? And, that city lord, Yang Kai observed the city lord's expression, secretly thinking to himself that she must have held deep feelings for Lan Tingyu. If not, she would not have been this agitated. Lan Tingyu sure was popular. First, there was Yu He, and now, there's this city lord. Not to mention, the city lord lives in the blood monster cave heaven. TSK. TSK. All of a sudden, he was reminded of the wooden token that the proprietress had given to him. At the time, she mentioned that it was a favor. It would now seem that the wooden token was most likely connected to the people here. She had also hesitated to say anything and looked a little helpless when she handed the wooden token to him. Her reaction seemed to be related to the current situation. She probably expected the situation to turn out this way if he came to this place. It was just that this place was so well hidden. If Yang Kai had not been chased or coincidentally obtained the map, he would not have stumbled upon this place. Various coincidences had come together to allow him to come here and meet the people in front of him. This queen has embarrassed herself in front of you, honored guest. Please forgive me. The city lord was naturally not an ordinary woman though. Although she had been emotionally shaken upon meeting him, she quickly recovered her composure after confirming that he was not Lan Tingyu. It could be seen just how firm and steady her will was. For a woman to have such strong mental cultivation, it was no wonder that she could sit on the throne of the city lord. "You're too polite, city lord. Yang Kai nodded lightly and asked, "May I know your names?" "This queen's name is Mo Mai. I am the city lord of Abundance City," the lady answered. Following that, she introduced the other 4 people to him. These people were the elders of Abundance City. The female elder was called Mu Qian Xian, the middle-aged man was Pang Duo, the old man was Gong Yang Shi, and the slightly chubby man was called Jin Yuan Lang. There are 5 elders in Abundance City. The last being Tan Luoxing. "I believe you've met Elder Tan already." Yang Kai couldn't help coldly snorting. It was that very Elder Tan who had repeatedly slandered and accused him of being Emerald Thunder City's spy. That was what caused the huge commotion in the first place. "Where is Elder Tan?" Mo Mai suddenly asked. Lady Jing replied, "I noticed that Elder Tan seemed to be injured earlier. He is probably treating his wounds right now." While speaking, she snuck a glance at Yang Kai. If she had to be honest, she had been extremely shocked to see the scene of wounded lying all over the ground when she arrived on the scene just now. City Lord Mo Mai nodded lightly at those words. Pang Duo then asked, "Little brother Yang, how do you know about Lan Tingyu if you are not acquainted with brother Lan?" Yang Kai answered, "Lan Yu Ruo, Yu He, and I are close acquaintances. It is through them that I learned about Lan Tingyu's existence." "So that's how it is." Pang Duo immediately understood the situation. Jin Yuan Lang asked, "How is brother Lan doing now?" Yang Kai turned to look at Jin Yuan Lang with a slight frown. Based on what he heard from these people and what he understood from their actions, it was likely that Lan Tingyu, the proprietress, and Yu He had come to Abundance City together and obtained that wooden token. Furthermore, City Lord Mo Mai seemed to have fallen deeply in love with Lan Tingyu here. Unfortunately, this was the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. Outsiders would be forced to leave once the time limit was up, so there was no way for them to send word of what happened later to Abundance City. In other words, these people had no idea that Lan Tingyu had died a long time ago. Worried about how City Lord Mo Mai would react, Yang Kai was not sure whether he should tell them the truth. He pondered in silence for a time before deciding that honesty would be best here and explained, "You might not be aware, but Lan Tingyu died a long time ago." As soon as the statement came out, Mo Mai's body shook violently. Her emotions that had just stabilized became disordered again. Pang Duo and the others glanced at her worriedly while Mu Qian Xian quickly said, "Our condolences, City Lord. Please restrain your grief." Mo Mai lowered her head so that her hair obscured her eyes and cast a dense shadow over her face. They could not read her expression. Nevertheless, she slowly raised her hand and said, "It's fine. I had a feeling that was the case. Why else would he fail to return after so long, unless something had happened to him? He promised to bring us out of this place back then after all." Seeing how she forced herself to remain strong and endured the pain even though it felt like thousands of blades were slicing her heart, the elders felt sad too. However, they did not know how to comfort her. It was not just Mo Mai, of course. The rest of them had also speculated that something had happened to Lan Tingyu. It was just that they never received any news from the outside world, so they continued to hold on to that glimmer of hope. Now that they knew the truth, even that glimmer no longer existed. "Were you all very close to Lan Tingyu?" Yang Kai asked after observing them. Pang Duo replied, "To tell you the truth, little brother, Abundance City was founded with the help of brother Lan. If not for brother Lan, we all would have perished long ago under the claws of the monster beasts. It can be said that brother Lan is our savior." "Is that how it is?" Yang Kai was astonished. No wonder the proprietress claimed that the wooden token was a favor. It turned out to be a favor indeed. Abundance City was only established with Lan Tingyu's help. That's one heck of a favor. Yang Kai secretly guessed that Lan Tingyu and the proprietress encountered these people from Abundance City when they entered the Blood Monster Cave Heaven back then and forged bonds of affection and friendship with each other. They later helped the people here to establish Abundance City and promised to find an opportunity to bring them out of the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. It was just that fate had other plans. After Lan Tingyu left the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, the heaven-defying opportunities he obtained made him the target of various cave heavens and paradises. These opportunities eventually cost him his life. Needless to say, he never returned to this place again. Over 1,000 years had passed since then. That was why these people had mistaken Yang Kai for Lan Tingyu when he first came here. It was also why Tan Luoxing was so shocked and blurted out, "Why did you come back here after so many years?" Upon considering all this, Yang Kai suddenly felt as though things were not adding up, so he hurriedly asked, "Has Elder Tan Luoxing ever met Lan Tingyu in the past?" Jin Yuan Lang nodded, "Of course. Elder Tan and the rest of us here can be considered the earliest residents of Abundant City. When we first arrived at this place, there were only a few dozen of us. It was only after so many years of progress that we reached our current scale." Yang Kai wrinkled his brow. "That's strange. If Elder Tan is acquainted with Lan Tingyu and mistook me for him, why did he insist on slandering and accusing me of being a spy from Emerald Thunder City? He tried to kill me as soon as he saw me. If not for the fact that I have some skill, I would be nothing more than a corpse by now. I don't even know where Emerald Thunder City is located." Something like that happened. Pang Duo was surprised. Mu Qian pondered in silence, but a moment later, she glanced in Momai's direction and heaved a heavy sigh without saying anything. Similarly, the others seemed to understand something and their expressions became ugly. Chu Hua Shong suddenly whispered from behind Yang Kai, "Junior brother, it seems that Elder Tan regarded you as a love rival." Realization dawned on Yang Kai after listening to her words. Everything made sense if that was truly the case. Tan Luoxing was in love with City Lord Momai, but Momai only had eyes for Lan Tingyu. It was just that Lan Tingyu failed to appear after so many years, leading Tan Luoxing to believe that he still had a chance with her. Unfortunately, Yang Kai happened to arrive at this place at this time and had his wooden token taken away by Fan Wuxin. Only one such wooden token had been issued by Abundant City throughout history. It was something that Lan Tingyu took with him when he left. Only a dozen or so people knew about the existence of this wooden token, and out of all the people who knew about the situation, many had died over the years. Mo Mai and the 5 elders were the only ones left who knew about the origins of this wooden token. When Tan Luoxing saw the wooden token, he naturally sought to investigate the situation thoroughly. In the end, he saw Yang Kai and mistakenly assumed that Lan Tingyu had returned, sparking a murderous impulse in his heart. He immediately tried to kill Yang Kai while the latter was bound by the restraints of the firm Yuan nail. Who would have learned the truth if he destroyed the corpse and removed all evidence? It was Tan Luoxing's bad luck that Yang Kai was not bound by the restraints of the firm Yuan nail at all. Yang Kai wounded him with a single palm strike. Afterward, things spiraled out of control until there was no turning back. "Jinger, summon Elder Tan here at once. I have something to ask him." Momai's expression was filled with rage. Jinger bowed, "Yes." Immediately afterward, she flew out of the City Lord's mansion to search for Tan Luoxing. Pang Duo glanced at Fan Wuxin, who had followed along. "Deacon Fan, I heard that you were the one to bring Brother Yang and his companion back." Fan Wuxin quickly replied, "That's right. A few days ago, my men and I were guarding the Grand Array portal when we suddenly noticed a figure approaching, as though searching for something. Worried that it might be a spy sent by Emerald Thunder City to collect intelligence, I led my men to attack and capture this senior brother and senior sister. I can now see that it was all just a misunderstanding." While speaking, he cupped his fist at Yang Kai and Chu Hua Shong to express his apology, secretly afraid. It was fortunate that Yang Kai had been injured at the time and lost most of his combat capabilities. Fan Wuxin could not have brought his men back safe and sound otherwise. "What happened afterward?" Pang Duo asked again. Fan Wuxin immediately recounted what happened in detail. When he saw the pattern on the wooden token, he felt that it was very similar to the symbol of Abundant City. Thus, he took possession of it and went around asking about it. To his surprise, nobody knew about the wooden token. Tan Luoxing came looking for him after hearing the news and later took the wooden token and headed straight for the dungeon. What followed was a huge commotion. Tan Luoxing had issued an order for all the cultivators in Abundant City to besiege Yang Kai, in the name of killing a spy. Consequently, many people were wounded by Yang Kai. Upon hearing that Tan Luoxing had repeatedly accused Yang Kai of being Emerald Thunder City's spy, the expressions of the elders became rather ugly. Even if they ignored the fact that the City Lord and Lan Tingyu were deeply in love with one another, Abundant City was first established with the help of Lan Tingyu and the others. Therefore, everyone in Abundant City essentially owed their lives to Lan Tingyu. Tan Luo Xing had been blinded by jealousy and acted foolishly. As one of the 5 great elders of Abundant City, his actions undoubtedly repaid kindness with enmity and brought shame to them all. Where is the wooden token now? Mu Qian asked. Fan Wuxin replied, with Elder Tan. Mo Mai interjected, the wooden token is not important. We only gave Tingyu a faith token back then because he and the others helped to establish Abundant City at the beginning. Abundant City owes the bearer of the wooden token a great favor. Yang Kai, you are the one who brought the wooden token here. If there is anything you need, please speak freely. Abundant City will not refuse as long as it can satisfy your demands. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4271, Golden Gorilla King. Yang Kai's eyes lit up at those words and he quickly asked, does Abundant City have any 7th order yin or metal element monster cores? Pang Duo laughed bitterly at those words. Little brother Yang, do you think we have the strength to kill a 7th order monster beast? If a 7th order monster beast were to appear here, Abundant City would have been razed to the ground a long time ago. We don't have any 6th order monster cores in stock in Abundant City either. If you need any 5th order monster cores, then we might be able to share some with you. What use are 5th order monster cores to me? Abundant City had existed for thousands of years, so Yang Kai originally thought that it would have accumulated some monster cores over the years. There was a possibility that they had what he needed. Only now did he learn that Abundant City was not as wealthy as he imagined. It made sense when he thought about it though. He estimated that a 7th order monster beast could exert strength equivalent to a mid-rank open heaven realm master. How could they win against a 7th order monster beast with their strength? Since there were no 7th order monster cores available, then he had nothing else to ask for. In any case, he only came here to treat his wounds. Now that he was almost fully recovered, it was time for him to leave. A blanket of silence fell over the scene. Wu Xin, why don't you take your leave? You should get your wounds treated properly. A short while later, Pang Duo dismissed Fan Wuxin with a wave of his hand. Fan Wuxin left immediately. At this moment, Jinga returned. It was just that she was alone. Moreover, she had a strange expression on her face. The generally taciturn Gong Yang, she was puzzled and asked, "Where is Elder Tan?" She replied, "I couldn't find Elder Tan. His residence is empty." "How can that be?" Pang Duo was astonished. "Have you searched the city? Is Elder Tan treating his wounds somewhere else?" Before she could respond, they heard a rush of footsteps coming from outside. Immediately after that, a person urgently shouted, reporting, "Golden Gorilla King is here." "What?" Jin Yuan Lang shouted. He was so shocked that he jumped up from his chair. "Why is he here again? Didn't he come here just a few days ago?" Likewise, the others also looked solemn. It was as though something major was about to happen. Yang Kai and Chu Hua Shong exchanged glances with each other. They did not know who this Golden Gorilla King was that he could make the people of Abundant City react like they were about to engage a formidable enemy. Reporting. Another shout entered their ears. That shout was followed by a figure landing in the City Lord's main hall. "Speak." Mo Mai shouted with great majesty. That person cupped his fists. "City Lord, Elder Tan forcibly opened the Grand Array barrier and fled on his own just now. At this moment, the Grand Array is not functioning and the entrance to the city is wide open." "Bastard!" Mo Mai leapt to her feet with a furious roar while the expression of the others also changed greatly. This truly was a case where when it rained, it poured. Golden Gorilla King's sudden arrival was bad enough, but they could have dealt with the situation no matter how dangerous and critical it was so long as the Grand Array remained intact. However, Tan Luo Xing had forced open the Grand Array barrier and caused problems with its operation. It was like throwing Abundant City into the fire and roasting them on a stake. If they failed to handle this matter properly, there was a high chance that Abundant City would be reduced to ashes today. Pang Duo was stunned. Why did Elder Tan forcibly open the Grand Array? Why did he leave? Chu Hua Shong said, "Are you stupid? It's obvious that bastard surnamed Tan ran away. Ran away? He sounded like he couldn't believe it. He was just about to ask why Tan Luo Xing would flee when he suddenly realized something. Tan Luo Xing clearly knew that he had been exposed for slandering Yang Kai. He was afraid of being punished by the city lord and felt too humiliated to remain in Abundant City. That was why he hurriedly fled. After all, the commotion earlier was quite large. Although nobody died, it was only because Yang Kai had held back. Nevertheless, countless people were injured as a result. If it wasn't for Tan Luo Xing's slanderous words, those incidents would not have occurred. As an elder of Abundant City, he allowed jealousy to blind him, not only causing him to repay kindness with enmity and bring shame to Abundant City, but also resulting in great losses to Abundant City. Therefore, he simply had no face to stay. Leave aside the matters involving Elder Tan for now. Our priority at the moment is dealing with Golden Gorilla King. Mo Mai walked down from the city lord's throne. Her voice was steady and her appearance was imposing as she began issuing orders. Since he came here, he must want a tribute. He will leave as long as we can fulfill his requirements. Elder Mu, how many offerings does Abundant City have left? Mu Qian replied, there's not much left, only 4 or 5 monster cores at most. Golden Gorilla King usually only comes once or twice a year, so we have enough time to hunt monster beasts and gather the necessary tribute. It has only been a month since he last came here though. We emptied out our inventory at the time. Moreover, the team we sent out to hunt monster beasts has yet to return. What tributes could we possibly have? Despite knowing that this was a possible outcome, Mo Mai still felt her heart sinking in despair after listening to Mu Qian's report. Without enough tribute, they could not send Golden Gorilla King away peacefully. That could mean annihilation for Abundant City. City Lord, Elders, Golden Gorilla King seems to be heavily injured, the cultivator who reported this news earlier added. Golden Gorilla King is injured. A light flashed in Gong Yangshi's eyes and he nodded. That explains why he came back so soon. It's obvious he wants the tributes to treat his wounds. Jin Yuan Lang smiled bitterly. But, we don't have any offerings for him. I wonder if he will become enraged. Mo Mai sighed. Regardless of the circumstances, we should go out and meet him. Let's hope it's a blessing, not a curse. Even if it is a curse though, it can't be avoided. It's best if he can retreat peacefully. Otherwise, we can only draw upon the strength of the entire city to fight him. After saying that, she turned to look at Yang Kai and added, Sir Yang, Abundant City has wronged you regarding the matter with Elder Tan. Once this queen finishes dealing with Golden Gorilla King, I will discuss the finer details with you. Yang Kai nonchalantly replied, please don't worry about that, City Lord. As you've said, all this was caused by Elder Tan. What happened previously was just a big misunderstanding. On the other hand, I injured many of your people and should be asking for your forgiveness, City Lord Mo. As for this Golden Gorilla King, please allow us to come along if you don't mind. Mo Mai glanced at him and gently nodded with a grateful expression on her face. Many thanks, Sir Yang. Yang Kai had the strength to throw Abundant City into chaos, which clearly showed that he was very powerful. He could provide extra protection if he came along. Nevertheless, Mo Mai couldn't help feeling ashamed. Abundant City was supposed to return Yang Kai a favor, but instead a huge misunderstanding had caused him to suffer. Now, even after all that, he was voluntarily offering them his assistance. Sir Yang not only looks very similar to Tingyu, but he also has the same old-fashioned compassion. If Lan Tingyu had not rescued us back then, we would not have survived this long. We would have long been eaten by monster beasts. From Yang Kai's point of view, Abundant City was jointly established with the help of the proprietress and Yu He, so now that it was in trouble, he could not just sit back and ignore them. Although his injuries had yet to recover fully and he could not exert his complete strength, it would not be a problem for him to bring out 80% of his maximum. While speeding forward, Yang Kai was just about to ask about Golden Gorilla King when he suddenly heard an earth-shaking roar coming from not far away. This sound was a beast's howl which clearly came from a monster beast. Moreover, it also sounded very familiar, like he had heard this roar somewhere before. When he followed Mo Mai and the others to the Grand Array portal, Yang Kai looked out and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What a coincidence. At this moment, the barrier of Abundant City's Grand Array had been damaged after being forcibly opened by Tan Luo Xing during his escape and could not close properly as a result. A gorilla glowing with golden light was standing in front of the wide-open portal with his hands on the ground and his head held high. He was several tens of meters tall. Not to mention, he was looking down on the crowd with a contemptuous gaze as though he was looking at a group of ants. Moreover, his expression seemed impatient. A while ago, Yang Kai had witnessed this gorilla fighting a life-or-death battle with a wolf. Their fight had shaken the very world itself. Yang Kai previously used the gorilla and the wolf as a deterrent to escape Yin Xinjiao and his lackeys before he later arrived at Abundant City. When Mo Mai and the others mentioned a golden gorilla king, Yang Kai mistakenly assumed that they were referring to some powerful cultivator. Only now did he realize that the other party was actually a sixth-order monster beast. Yang Kai did not know what the outcome of the fight between the gorilla and the wolf was, however, he had the feeling that the gorilla did not win. That was because Golden Gorilla King was covered in wounds and dripping with blood. It was obvious that the wolf had bitten him and torn large chunks of flesh from his body. Even the golden light covering him seemed a little dim and his aura was rather weak. Mo Mai and the others came to a stop several hundred meters away from Golden Gorilla King, each of them wearing a solemn expression. They bowed to him before Mo Mai spoke. Golden Gorilla King, why have you returned to Abundant City so quickly? Golden Gorilla King lowered his head and growled something. The meaning was unclear, but the way he behaved indicated that he understood what they were saying. It could be seen that his sentience was quite high. Mo Mai shook her head. We've handed all the tributes we gathered to you earlier. Abundant City does not have any offerings left. We are powerless to help you even if you come here. Who? Star. Golden Gorilla King flew into a rage. He lowered his head and let out a fierce howl, baring his fangs at them. A violent wind blew in their direction, causing Mo Mai's hair to fly out in the wind. Even so, she remained motionless. Her expression did not change even when she stood in front of a furious sixth-order monster beast, showing her strong spiritual cultivation. Mo Mai continued once the noise faded, Abundant City will support you if you wish to treat your wounds. It's just that we don't have what you need. Nothing will change even if you lose your temper. Who? Star. Golden Gorilla King let out another furious roar. Not only did he roar louder than before, but he also ran around and smashed several houses with his fists. Afterward, he waved his enormous fist at Mo Mai and the others as though saying, "Are you scared?" Many of the cultivators who had gathered around couldn't help taking several steps back. On the other hand, Mo Mai did not move. She simply called out calmly, "You are injured right now. It's best not to get angry so easily, otherwise, it will be harder for you to recover." Golden Gorilla King ignored her completely, like a child throwing a temper tantrum. He was enraged because he could not get what he wanted. Clenching his fists tightly, he punched the ground repeatedly. Violent monster chi spread out in all directions, causing many to look terrified. Yang Kai quietly asked Jin Yuan Lang, who was standing next to him, "What does Golden Gorilla King want?" Jin Yuan Lang answered with a bitter smile, "Metal Element Monster Beast Cause." Marshall Peak, Chapter 4272, I'll show you what big is. A metal element monster beast core? Yang Kai could not hide his astonishment. Why does it have to be of the metal element? Little brother Yang, you might be unaware of this fact. Pang Duo leaned over, stroking his beard absent-mindedly while watching the raging Golden Gorilla King warily. He explained, "I don't know about the monster beasts in the outside world, however, I've heard that there are some differences with the monster beasts here. The monster beasts here can strengthen themselves and recover from their injuries by consuming the monster cores of monster beasts of the same element as them, thereby becoming more and more powerful. The monster beasts here grow stronger through such a method." Yang Kai was surprised at first, but he soon understood. It wasn't just the monster beasts in this place. There were many examples of monster beasts fighting for monster cores in the outside world too. Monster beasts cultivated very differently from humans. Humans had secret arts and secret techniques, but monster beasts did not. They relied completely on their instincts. If they felt that the monster core of another monster beast would be highly beneficial to them, they would not hold back if they could obtain it. It was just that the monster beast cores in the outside world usually contained a mixture of attributes. It was not nearly as pure and singular compared to the monster beast cores in the blood monster cave heaven. That's right. The first time Golden Gorilla King appeared outside Abundant City, it had only just advanced to become a 6th-order monster beast. After so many years of receiving tribute from us, I'm afraid it's not far from becoming a 7th-order monster beast. Pang Duo's eyes looked fearful. They were no match for an ordinary 6th-order monster beast, so what more need be said about a 6th-order monster beast at its peak like Golden Gorilla King? One should not be fooled by its seriously wounded condition. If it really came down to a fight, the few thousands of people in Abundant City would not be enough to repel him. Yang Kai asked curiously, "How did you manage to make an agreement with Golden Gorilla King to provide him with tributes?" Jin Yuan Lang replied with a wry smile, "It's not something that can be helped. Abundant City would have ceased to exist a long time ago if we refused to offer tribute. However, over the years, there have been several crises that Golden Gorilla King helped defend us against. He knows that we have value, so he allows us to exist in this place. If he decides that we no longer have any value though, a monster beast's thoughts could not be inferred from human common sense. If they failed to bring out a satisfactory tribute this time, there was no saying what kind of consequences they might face. Abundant City and Golden Gorilla King seemed to be dependent on each other for survival. Although Abundant City was the weaker between the two, they could provide Golden Gorilla King with a steady supply of metal element monster beast cores. It was for that reason that Golden Gorilla King would occasionally protect Abundant City from danger. During their brief conversation, Golden Gorilla King was becoming more and more furious by the moment. He roared continuously, blowing a foul stench in their faces. Momai shouted, "Golden Gorilla King, I'm saying this for the last time. Abundant City does not have any tributes to offer at the moment. It's useless no matter how angry you get. Why don't you calm your anger and focus on healing yourself instead of wasting your energy in vain?" Golden Gorilla King turned to glare at her, his crimson eyes filled with a cruel and ferocious light. All of a sudden, he raised his palm and slammed it down fiercely. Momai shouted, "Everybody, watch out." While shouting, she immediately moved to block the attack. Many of Abundant City's cultivators trembled as they quickly used their respective divine abilities and secret techniques. The moment they attacked in unison, the world energy churned wildly. All sorts of divine abilities of various attributes transformed into a frenzy of attacks that shot towards Golden Gorilla King in different forms. Yang Kai and Chu Hua Shong looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Strictly speaking, the people in Abundant City could not be considered powerful. They were suppressed by the principles in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven and could not advance into the Open Heaven realm. It didn't matter whether it was Mo Mai, the elders, or the other cultivators. The strongest among them was only half-step Open Heaven realm. In essence, their strength was still within the range of the Emperor realm. However, these Emperor realm masters seemed to be different from the Emperor realm masters in the outside world. That was especially true for Mo Mai, Pang Duo, and the other elders. All of them had an overwhelmingly powerful and extremely pure Emperor Qi, while the divine abilities that they could unleash were also incredibly powerful. When Yang Kai fought Tan Luoxing back then, he had noticed this distinction. Among those in the half-step Open Heaven realm Yang Kai knew, even Chu Hua Shong might not be Tan Luoxing's opponent. It had to be said that Chu Hua Shong had condensed the 6th-order element powers while Tan Luoxing had only condensed 5th-order powers. It would now seem that Tan Luoxing was not a unique existence. It was the same case for Mo Mai and the other elders. After pondering over this matter for a while, Yang Kai understood the reason for this disparity. In the outside world, people like Mo Mai and Pang Duo would have tried to advance into the Open Heaven realm a long time ago. If they succeeded, they would experience a massive surge in strength. Of course, if they failed to break through, they would be reduced to ashes. There was no third possibility. Unfortunately, the people in Abundant City were suppressed by the principles in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven and could not advance any further. They had been stuck in the half-step open heaven realm for thousands of years. For that reason, they could only find other ways to increase their strength. It was only natural that their use of their open heaven elements became stronger and more refined after a long period of accumulation and precipitation. Similarly, the divine abilities that they could unleash were also more powerful. Yang Kai was secretly surprised. It would not be difficult for Momai, Pang Duo, and the others to advance into the open heaven realm if they could find a suitable opportunity. After all, they had much lower chances of failure with such solid foundations. While he was immersed in his thoughts, numerous divine abilities had already collided with the giant palm of Golden Gorilla King. A golden light shone brightly as sharp metal element power shot out in all directions like countless sword lights. A buzzing sound rang out endlessly, and in an instant, many abundant city cultivators collapsed to the ground with their fresh blood staining their surroundings red. Momai and the others might have stopped that giant palm for a moment with their divine abilities, but their efforts could not be sustained for much longer. Just as the palm was about to slam down, Momai, Pang Duo, and the others did not hesitate to rush forward. They frantically drew upon their power and blocked the palm from below Hong, star. A golden force ran rampant and sliced through the sky. Countless small wounds appeared on everybody. Meanwhile, the figures of Momai and the others staggered slightly. They were nearly pounded into the ground by Golden Gorilla King. No matter how powerful they were, they could not exceed the limits of the half-step open heaven realm. Even if Golden Gorilla King was injured, a peak 6th order monster beast could exert the strength on par with a low-rank open heaven realm master at will. Abundant City had no way to fight back at all. Crack. The sound of something breaking rang out. Jin Yuan Lang's legs had been twisted and broken. Despite being in intense pain though, he grit his teeth and persevered without letting out a single sound. When Yang Kai saw that, he knew he could not stand by any longer. If he continued to just watch without doing anything, there was no telling how many people would die in this place today. He rushed forward and raised his hand, summoning the Azure Dragon Spear. In the next moment, the spear stabbed towards Golden Gorilla King like a dragon going out to sea. Golden Gorilla King turned to look in this direction, and while baring his fangs, he raised his other hand that was covered in dense metal element power and grabbed at Yang Kai. "Sir Yang, be careful," Momai shouted. The words had only just left her mouth when she saw him vanishing out of sight after he was caught squarely in the middle of the Golden Gorilla King's palm. This Pang Duo and the others looked speechless. They originally thought that Yang Kai had extraordinary strength since he could cause such a huge commotion in Abundant City. Who could have known that he would be so vulnerable? That thought had only just come to mind when they heard the Golden Gorilla King crying out in surprise. Immediately following that, fresh blood spurted out like a hurricane from his tightly clenched hand. A figure holding a spear shot out from within, spinning like a top that directly drilled a hole through the giant palm. The spear kept going, heading towards the Golden Gorilla King's head. Yang Kai's hair was disheveled. Covered in Golden Gorilla King's fresh blood, he shouted solemnly, "It's best you don't get too brazen." Golden Gorilla King roared furiously and drew back both hands. Completely ignoring the wound on his palm, he clasped his fists together and savagely brought them down on Yang Kai Hong. A shockwave spread out as Yang Kai's figure was slammed into the ground like a meteor. Likewise, Golden Gorilla King's figure was sent flying into the distance. An extra ferocious-looking wound was added to his body that was originally already covered in wounds. With Yang Kai's support, the pressure on Momai and the others reduced significantly. They hurriedly ran over in concern and stood beside the pit when they saw Yang Kai being smashed into the ground with Pang Duo shouting out, "Little brother Yang, Shua, star." Yang Kai jumped out of the pit as his hair blew in the wind, shaking his head for a bit before stating, "I'm fine." Although his injuries had yet to heal, Golden Gorilla King was also severely injured. Both sides were on even ground and nobody held the advantage, a fact made obvious by the exchange of blows just now. His fine even after taking that. Pang Duo and the others were completely stunned. They couldn't believe that anybody could survive after being smashed into the ground by Golden Gorilla King. They all thought that Yang Kai would definitely die from that attack. Yang Kai spat out a mouthful of blood and stabbed the azure dragon spear into the ground. He glared fiercely at Golden Gorilla King, who was also getting back up, and grinned savagely. Do you think you can do whatever you please just because you're bigger? Today, I'll show you just what it means to be big. With a guttural roar, Yang Kai shouted, "Dragon transformation." A high-pitched dragon roar exploded from his mouth, echoing across the sky. An enormous golden dragon appeared behind Yang Kai's back, looking extremely lifelike. The dragon eyes were filled with a majesty that stood above all other living beings. The golden dragon phantom plunged into his body and vanished out of sight in the next instant before a crackling sound rang out. Under everybody's stunned gazes, Yang Kai's figure suddenly swelled and transformed into a 500-meter-tall half-dragon in the blink of an eye. With the continued development of his golden divine dragon source and the purification of his dragon vein, Yang Kai was starting to gain better control over his dragon transformation secret technique. His current 500-meter form should be enough to crush Golden Gorilla King, who was only several dozen meters tall, and if that wasn't enough, he could always transform into a behemoth more than 3,000 meters tall. Yang Kai's entire body was covered with dragon scales, his hands transformed into dragon claws, dragon horns grew out of his head, a dragon tail swished about behind his back, and a dragon beard flew about wildly below his jaw. He was the very picture of majesty and invincibility. Chu Hua Shong lifted a hand to cover her red lips, staring up at him with shock in her beautiful eyes. It was her first time witnessing his transformation. She initially thought that she understood him to an extent after the life-or-death experiences they went through together. It was not until this moment that she realized something. What she saw was only the tip of the iceberg. Inside Abundant City, thousands of people raised their heads and stared up at Yang Kai. All of them felt as insignificant as ants in front of this enormous figure. It was one thing if it was just their height, but the majesty Yang Kai radiated was what truly made them shudder. They instinctively felt the urge to bow down and worship him. The cultivators of Abundant City were not the only ones frozen in shock. Golden Gorilla King was also stunned for a moment. As a monster beast, he could sense the dragon pressure that Yang Kai was releasing much more acutely than humans ever could, so his eyes narrowed slightly and he instinctively took a few steps back. However, he soon directed a furious roar at Yang Kai. It was almost as though he felt ashamed for backing away just now, so he could only strengthen his momentum through this roar. Similarly, Yang Kai roared back at Golden Gorilla King. The dragon roar resounded throughout the skies, making the wind and clouds pale in comparison. Then, he took a step forward and charged at Golden Gorilla King. Golden Gorilla King did not shrink back in fear either, rushing forward instead. The two enormous figures quickly collided with each other with a deafening explosion that shook the entire world. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4273, Blood Principles Restriction. Hong hong hong, star. A series of violent explosions rang out as the two enormous figures were tangled together, fighting each other with reckless abandon. Abundant City was a mess. The city was not that large in the first place, so how could it withstand the damage caused by the battle between Yang Kai in his half-dragon form and Golden Gorilla King? It didn't take very long for half of the city to be destroyed. Countless buildings collapsed and turned into ruins. Yang Kai could not afford to care about that at the moment though. Golden Gorilla King might be severely injured, but every attack unleashed by a peak 6th order monster beast contained great destructive power. In his current state, Yang Kai could not defend against those attacks unless he went all out, therefore, he had no time to be distracted or worry about anything else. Although he had an absolute advantage when it came to size, there were times when having a larger body did not necessarily guarantee a win. Golden Gorilla King's movements were swift and agile. He would climb onto Yang Kai's body from time to time, biting and scratching his scales and flesh with his fangs and sharp claws. As a result, Yang Kai's back was drenched in blood and his dragon scales flew in all directions. On the other hand, Yang Kai countered by grabbing Golden Gorilla King by one arm. He tightened his grip and swung his foe left to right as though he was smashing something with a large hammer. Hong hong hong, star. The ground shook and the mountains shuddered. Golden Gorilla King roared furiously as his body shone brightly with golden light. Yang Kai suddenly felt pain coming from his palm, as though the sharp metal element power was piercing his dragon claws, so he couldn't help throwing Golden Gorilla King to the side. As soon as Golden Gorilla King landed, he raised both arms and hammered his fists against his chest with loud thuds. He was completely enraged. Reaching out his hand, he picked up a rock beside him. He leaped up high and brought the rock smashing down on Yang Kai's head. Like a meteor falling from the skies, his power was simply astonishing. Everybody felt nervous at the sight. The scene in front of them was practically a battle between monsters. Nobody dared to approach within a kilometer radius. Yang Kai clenched his dragon claw and threw a punch, smashing the huge boulder to pieces. At the same time, he took a deep breath and his belly swelled up rapidly. A majestic dragon roar sounded as he opened his mouth to spew out pitch-black flames. Fire Dragon's flaming breath. Even before he refined the Golden Crow's true fire, Yang Kai had been capable of using this particular Dragon Clan secret technique. After he refined the Golden Crow's true fire, this secret technique became considerably more powerful with the blessing of the pitch-black flames. Scarlet Star's Poison Lady had died tragically because of this attack back in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. Yang Kai had burnt her alive until she became nothing more than a charred corpse. The flames raged wildly, even causing the surrounding space to warp and tear. Golden Gorilla King could sense the power and danger of these black flames and did not dare to underestimate this attack. The golden light around his body shone brilliantly and formed a defensive shell. When the black flames and the golden light collided, the golden light was suppressed in an instant. While Golden Gorilla King could exert the strength of a low-rank open heaven realm master, and his metal element power was comparable to the Sixth Order, Yang Kai's Golden Crow's true fire was a high-rank open heaven power. One was clearly superior to the other. Besides, even among the 5 elements, fire suppressed metal. Hence, the Sixth Order monster beast could only forcefully endure the burning of the Golden Crow's true fire and rushed out of the jet of flames. He clenched both hands together and viciously slammed them down on Yang Kai's head. Yang Kai staggered under that attack and stumbled backward unsteadily. Golden Gorilla King showed no mercy. He used both hands and feet to punch and kick at Yang Kai at a high speed. The golden light around his body gathered in front of him, transforming into the shape of a spear. Following that, the golden light shot, tearing the air apart. A huge sense of crisis filled Yang Kai's heart, so he hurriedly activated his Dragon Shield secret technique to protect himself from this piercing attack. Catcher, star. The golden spear slammed into the dragon shield and immediately shattered it to pieces. However, the golden spear did not seem to lose any momentum whatsoever and continued to enlarge rapidly in Yang Kai's field of vision. A cold sense of fear swept over him as he quickly retreated. Yang Kai realized that he had underestimated Golden Gorilla King. A peak Sixth Order monster beast was extremely powerful indeed, remaining so ferocious despite his severe injuries. What would he be like if he were fully healed? Of course, Yang Kai was also badly injured and had not fully recovered, so he was unable to exert his full strength either. Yang Kai reached out his hand and summoned something. The azure dragon spear sliced through the air and flew towards him. The moment his claws closed around the spear, it suddenly swelled and turned into a world-shattering 500-meter-long weapon. The spear stabbed forward and smashed the approaching golden spear to pieces. Still, Yang Kai felt his arms going numb as the azure dragon spear nearly flew out of his grip. Fortunately, he quickly clenched his fists and drew the spear back slightly before thrusting out once more. Golden Gorilla King appeared from behind the golden spear light, charging forward aggressively. He bared his fangs fiercely, making him seem absolutely terrifying. Kai, star. Blood splattered in all directions as a low roar rang out. The azure dragon spear had pierced right through Golden Gorilla King's chest and come out his back. Yang Kai pulled out the spear, causing warm blood to gush out onto the ground. Even so, Golden Gorilla King advanced forward instead of retreating. Taking advantage of the momentary opening Yang Kai showed after unleashing his attack, he threw a punch that landed squarely on Yang Kai's chest. Yang Kai's giant half-dragon body was sent flying backwards, landing on the ground heavily and sliding for several thousand meters before coming to a stop. Everywhere he passed, buildings collapsed into rubble. By the time young Kai got back up and prepared to continue his fight with Golden Gorilla King, he was astonished to discover that his foe was nowhere to be found, so he called out hastily, "Where did he go?" Chu Hua Shong stretched out a finger and pointed in a certain direction. Yang Kai looked over and saw a golden dot fleeing desperately into the distance. Golden Gorilla King was already more than a dozen kilometers away by now. He clearly understood that nothing good would come out of the battle even if he fought on, therefore, he decided to retreat. It was a wise decision. It was just that young Kai was not prepared to let Golden Gorilla King flee. He raised his spear and laughed. "Want to run now? Do you think you can?" Before he could take more than 2 steps though, Momai shouted at the top of her voice, "Sir Yang, please show mercy." Yang Kai stopped and lowered his head to look in her direction. Seeing that she had his attention, Momai spoke in a rather sad tone, "Sir, please don't give chase. Please spare his life." "Why?" Yang Kai questioned. To which Momai replied, "Golden Gorilla King might have benefited greatly from Abundant City, but it is also true that he has helped us to survive through numerous crises over the years. It can be said that he is our benefactor. This time, it might be that he is in urgent need to recuperate, which was why he acted so rashly." Upon hearing those words, Yang Kai couldn't help giving a word of advice: save a thief from the gallows and he will help hang you in the future. "City Lord Mo, please think this through." But Momai insisted, "Sir, please spare his life." Yang Kai pondered for a moment before he released his dragon transformation secret art and he returned to his human form. Since Momai had already said so much, he couldn't be bothered to chase after Golden Gorilla King anymore. Not to mention, Golden Gorilla King was not an opponent to be trifled with. Although Yang Kai was confident he could hunt down and kill Golden Gorilla King with his current strength, there was no denying that he would have to pay a certain price to do so. Momai thanked him while the other elders were staring at him in shock and awe. It was the first time they had ever seen anyone fighting Golden Gorilla King on equal terms. "This guy seems to be even stronger and more aggressive than Lan Tingyu." Many things had happened in Abundant City today. First, Yang Kai had caused a huge commotion, then one of the 5 great elders, Tan Luo Xing, forced open the Grand Array and escaped the city. Before the dust had settled on these shocking events, Golden Gorilla King appeared. Yang Kai and Golden Gorilla King then fought a fierce battle, which practically leveled half of Abundant City. Looking around at the ruined buildings and wailing residents, Momai couldn't help furrowing her brow deeply. All the elders were injured. In particular, Jin Yuan Lang's legs had been broken. Many others in the city had been injured as well. It could be said that Abundant City had suffered severe damage to its very foundation. Soon, those who were not injured began to rescue those who were under Momai's command. Another group of people was sent to do emergency repairs on the defensive Grand Array. Thus, the entire Abundant City was swept up in a flurry of activity. Yang Kai found a quiet place and rested for a bit. After that, he came out again to check on the situation in Abundant City. He said to Momai, who stood next to him, "City Lord Mo, I'm afraid you can't stay here for much longer. You spared Golden Gorilla King's life today, but the thoughts of monster beasts are very difficult to predict. It is hard to say whether he will or will not come to take revenge on the city after he recovers from his injuries. How will Abundant City protect itself at the time?" Momai sighed, "I'm aware of that. It's just, how could it be so easy to migrate to a different place? Back then, they only managed to build and establish the city thanks to the help of Lan Tingyu, the proprietress, and a few others. They finally reached their current scale following the gradual development of the city over thousands of years. Even if they wanted to migrate elsewhere, they needed to have a safe place to act as their stronghold at the very least. It was just that there were no such safe places in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. What's more, Abundant City had their own enemies, such as Emerald Thunder City, which had been mentioned several times before. If Emerald Thunder City learned about what happened to Abundant City, they would not hold back. They would definitely gather an army to swallow up Abundant City, bones and all. Have you never considered leaving the Blood Monster Cave Heaven? Yang Kai was puzzled. Momai laughed bitterly. Why would we stay here if we could leave this place? Sir Yang, you may not be aware of this, but my ancestors were kidnapped by Blood Monster Divine Monarch and forced to live here. Blood Monster Divine Monarch was proficient in the Tao of Blood, so he placed a blood principles restriction on them. This restriction is passed down from generation to generation. If the blood principles restriction does not constantly receive the aura of the blood monster cave heaven, we will immediately suffer a backlash and die on the spot. That is why we must first remove the restriction before we can leave this place, otherwise, we will only be walking to our deaths. Blood principles restriction? Yang Kai raised his brow at those words. City Lord Mo, may I have a look? She looked at him in surprise. Sir Yang, do you understand the Tao of Blood? Yang Kai calmly remarked, I didn't at first, but now I know a little bit. He had never touched upon the Tao of Blood in the past, but he had now comprehended several chapters of the Grand Evolution Immortal Bloodlight scripture that were inscribed on steles at the Blood Lake in order to enter its central palace. Although the final inscriptions had been fudged by Black Crow Divine Monarch, what Yang Kai learned previously was undoubtedly part of the true Bloodlight scripture. In other words, most of the cultivators present at the time had received some exposure to the Tao of Blood and blood principles. It was just that everybody was the same. They only understood some of the Bloodlight scripture's secret techniques, but not the actual secret arts. Please go ahead, Sir Yang. Momai did not have the attitude of a shy young maiden and instead generously stretched out her hand towards him. Yang Kai apologized for his discourtesy and placed 2 fingers on her wrist. His divine sense surged, probing into her bloodline where he soon discovered a mysterious restriction. It was closely connected to her bloodline and could not be separated by force. Not to mention, this restriction could be passed on continuously through reproduction. No wonder she mentioned that Lan Ting you wanted to find a way to bring them out of here. It now seems that they cannot leave the blood monster cave heaven at will. Under the effects of this restriction, they have no choice but to live in the blood monster cave heaven. A short while later, Yang Kai withdrew his chi and slowly shook his head. She asked, how is it? Yang Kai sighed, I can sense the restriction. But, I don't have the ability to remove it. Momai felt slightly hopeful when she heard his first sentence, only to quickly become disappointed with his next. In the end, she laughed bitterly, you are being too humble, Sir Yang. After all, he was able to force Golden Gorilla King back. That was by no means a small feat. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4274, Into the Depths. Yang Kai felt a slight sense of pity. He had been planning to use the sealed world bead to bring Momai and the others out of the blood monster cave heaven if they were willing. They were old acquaintances with the proprietress. It was nothing for him to help them out while he was at it. More importantly, he believed that the people in Abundant City were extremely rare talent. Judging from their battle with the Golden Gorilla King earlier, these Emperor Realm cultivators had a much stronger foundation than average emperors in the outside world. That was especially true for Momai and the Great Elders. They were no different from core disciples of the various cave heavens and paradises like Chu Hua Shong and Pei Wen Xian. Momai had condensed 6th order element powers while the rest of the elders had condensed the 5th order elements. Thanks to their precipitation over the years, they would surely have a greater chance of breaking through to the open heaven realm compared to others if they could obtain the opportunity. If that happened, they would form a whole batch of 5th order and 6th order open heaven realm masters. What did Voidland lack the most right now? Wasn't there a shortage of open heaven realm masters? Yang Kai believed that it would not be a problem for him to invite them into Voidland if he could bring them out. After all, they had lived their entire lives in the blood monster cave heaven, so they had no place to go in the outside world. Voidland was just right for them. Unfortunately, the blood principles restriction that Blood Monster Divine Monarch placed upon their ancestors had crushed all his hopes. If he placed them into the small sealed world, they would immediately die without the nourishment from the aura of the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. Momai sighed, this place has become more and more unstable recently. I'm afraid our fate is to live and die together with this world. Many thanks for your kindness though, Sir Yang. The Blood Monster Cave Heaven was showing signs of collapse. That was something Yang Kai also knew. The most obvious manifestation of this phenomenon was the continuous increase in the number of entrances to the Blood Monster Cave Heaven whenever the Blood Monster Cave Heaven opened. That was a sign that the Blood Monster Cave Heaven was merging with the Blood Monster territory. If these signs were appearing in the outside world, then there was bound to be more obvious signs inside the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. It would be particularly obvious to Mo Mai and the others who lived here. Yang Kai pondered in silence for a moment. City Lord Mo, you don't need to abandon all hope just yet. I know somebody who can lift the blood principle's restriction in your bodies.
Who?
Mo Mai asked in pleasant surprise. He grimaced, a guy named Black Crow Divine Monarch. Black Crow Divine Monarch had stolen the Tao of blood inheritance left behind by Blood Monster Divine Monarch and cultivated the complete version of the Grand Evolution Immortal Bloodlight scripture. It would be a simple matter if he were willing to lend a hand to help remove the blood principle's restriction. The main issue was that Black Crow Divine Monarch was wicked by nature. Moreover, he had a deep grudge against Yang Kai. It could be considered a miracle if they neither fought nor tried to kill each other when they encountered each other next, so how could Yang Kai convince him to help? Black Crow Divine Monarch? Mo Mai looked astonished. Although she lived her entire life in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, even she knew what the title Divine Monarch signified. Only a high-rank open heaven realm master was worthy of taking such a title. Why would a person standing so far above them be willing to help them remove the blood principle's restriction for no reason? Black Crow Divine Monarch is currently inside the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. If I encounter him by chance, I will ask him to help. It's just that there are some misunderstandings between us, so I cannot guarantee whether he will agree. I can only say that I will do my best. Mo Mai bowed and exclaimed gratefully, "Many thanks, Sir Yang." Yang Kai raised a hand to stop her. "It's not a big deal. Abundant City has deep ties with Madame Lan. Since that's the case, it also relates to me. I can't just sit back and watch now that I've met you. City Lord Mo, you should arrange for your subordinates to patch up the Grand Array. I cannot stay in this place for long, so I'll be leaving soon." Mo Mai nodded and hurriedly relayed the order to her people. It took 3 days and 3 nights for the repairs to Abundant City's Grand Array to be completed. Nevertheless, the ruined buildings in the city caused by the battle between Yang Kai and Golden Gorilla King also needed to be repaired. In addition, the countless wounded needed time to recuperate from their injuries. The events over the past few days had severely damaged Abundant City's foundation, so it would take a long time to recover completely. Meanwhile, Yang Kai and Chu Huashong took a good rest for a few days. 3 days later, the two of them took their leave. Mo Mai and the others did not stop them from departing, as they knew that outer world visitors like Yang Kai and Chu Huashong had entered the Blood Monster Cave Heaven to search for their own respective opportunities. It was impossible for these two to remain in Abundant City, as once the time limit was up, they would be forced to leave even if they didn't want to. The Grand Array was reactivated, and with Mo Mai in the lead, many of the elders and deacons of Abundant City saw Yang Kai and Chu Huashong off from afar. Thus, Yang Kai and Chu Huashong exited the Grand Array. When they looked back, all they saw was a sparkling lake behind them. Who could have known that a city was hidden behind such a calm scenery? "Let's go," Yang Kai called out. Chu Huashong asked, "Junior brother, where are we heading?" "The depths of the Blood Monster Cave Heaven." He took out a jade slip and checked the contents briefly. Blood Monster Divine Monarch had left behind 2 main inheritances. Even though the Tao of blood inheritance had been stolen by Black Crow Divine Monarch, there was still the beast taming inheritance. Yang Kai did not know where it was concealed, but the rumors claimed that the Blood Monster Divine Palace was located in the deepest depths of the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. The reason Yang Kai even entered this place was to search for high-rank metal and yin element materials. Who could say? The Blood Monster Divine Palace might contain exactly what he needed. Yang Kai was secretly looking forward to it. It would also be very interesting if he encountered Yin Xinjiao again. The last time they met, Yang Kai had been forced to flee desperately, which was a huge humiliation. Now that he had recovered his strength, he would surely teach Yin Xinjiao a lesson on showing proper respect. The pair traveled forward for several consecutive days but did not come across anybody at all. They barely even encountered any monster beasts, much less any spirit flowers or exotic herbs. Yang Kai knew that the series of encounters he experienced previously and the delay in Abundant City had caused him to be much slower than the others, so all the good stuff along the road ahead would surely have been taken. Be that as it may, this did not bother Yang Kai. There were a lot of good things in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, but not many interested him. After all, it was practically impossible for anybody else in the Emperor realm to be wealthier than him. They continued onward for another half a day when all of a sudden, they halted in their tracks and stood atop a small hill to study the battlefield in front of them. A huge battle had probably taken place here and there were still strong energy fluctuations lingering everywhere. The ground was also littered with damaged artifacts. A dozen or so corpses lay haphazardly on the ground, each one shriveled up terribly, as though something had drained all the essence out of their bodies. Moreover, these corpses retained expressions of horror on their faces from just before they died. Yang Kai and Chu Hua Shong exchanged a glance with each other and blurted out in unison, "Black Crow Divine Monarch." These people had clearly died from having their vitality drained by the Grand Evolution Immortal Bloodlight scripture. Such obvious signs clearly indicated that Black Crow Divine Monarch had attacked this place. Black Crow Divine Monarch's strength could be said to be invincible in this place. Even if Yang Kai went all out, he would not be a match for Black Crow Divine Monarch. This old dog had the heritage of a high-rank open heaven realm master after all. Now that he had possessed a body and revived himself, Emperor Realm Juniors were as insignificant as ants in front of him. Fortunately, Yang Kai knew the old fart's weakness. Black Crow Divine Monarch's damaged soul was a critical flaw. Yang Kai had nothing to fear even if he met Black Crow Divine Monarch again. It was just that he did not know how to ask Black Crow Divine Monarch to help remove the Blood Principle's restriction from the bodies of the people in Abundant City. It was extremely troubling. Based on the appearance of these corpses, they had been dead for a few days. All of their space rings were nowhere to be seen, but Yang Kai could not tell whether Black Crow Divine Monarch had taken them or the people who passed by later had looted them. If he had not come across Abundant City, Yang Kai would have taken a detour lest he run into Black Crow Divine Monarch again. However, he had promised Mo Mai that he would do his best to ask Black Crow Divine Monarch to help remove the Blood Principle's restriction in their bodies. As such, he could not avoid Black Crow Divine Monarch. The pair continued to track Black Crow Divine Monarch's progress. Along the way, they would occasionally come across some shriveled corpses. It was not just the corpses of cultivators but also the corpses of monster beasts. All of them had died from having their vitality drained by the Bloodlight scripture. Judging by Black Crow Divine Monarch's path, he seemed to be heading into the depths of the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. This discovery shocked Yang Kai. It was rumored that the Blood Monster Divine Palace was hidden at the core of the Blood Monster Cave Heaven where nobody had ever been before. All Blood Monster Divine Monarch's inheritances were preserved inside, waiting for the lucky person to discover them. It was just that the rumors had remained as nothing more than rumors after so many years. Nobody had ever confirmed the rumors because nobody had ever arrived at the depths of the Blood Monster Cave Heaven or found the Blood Monster Divine Palace. Even so, the current situation seemed to indicate that there was a high possibility the Blood Monster Divine Palace truly existed. If one were to say who had the greatest understanding of the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, it would not be Yang Kai or the proprietress. Rather, it would be Black Crow Divine Monarch. Although he had been sealed away by Blood Monster Divine Monarch for countless years, he had obtained Blood Monster Divine Monarch's Tao of Blood inheritance. How could he not have some understanding of the secrets in this place? If he was heading in this direction, then it could only mean that there was something in this direction that was attracting him. The only thing that could move a high-rank Open Heaven Realm Master could only be the inheritance of another high-rank Open Heaven Realm Master. After figuring out this point, Yang Kai increased his speed and pursued Black Crow Divine Monarch. They continued forward for a while before he suddenly halted. Chu Hua Shong followed suit and stopped to look at him. "What's wrong, junior brother?" Yang Kai turned to look in a certain direction. "There are sounds of battle." He paused for a moment and added, "It's heading our way." When he spread out his divine sense, he could detect the sounds of battle coming from a certain direction. The other party probably detected him through their perception as a result and immediately rushed towards him. He did not know whether the other party intended to seek help or foist the enemy off on them instead. He initially planned to ignore the other party, but before he could leave, he noticed something and exclaimed in surprise. Following that, he pushed his divine sense strongly and probed the situation in that direction. A short while later, he became overjoyed and called out, "Senior sister, follow me." While saying so, he immediately rushed to meet the other party. Chu Huashong did not know why he was so elated, but she did not question him. It didn't take long before two figures that were fleeing desperately appeared in their field of vision. It was a man and a woman. Moreover, this man and woman were being pursued closely by 6 others. They unleashed a continuous barrage of secret techniques and the power of artifacts, blasting those 2 fleeing figures until they became increasingly desperate. A dazzlingly bright light burst out. It was a killing move summoned by one of the pursuers that shot straight at the backs of the fleeing duo. The woman seemed to perceive that danger and hurriedly turned around to mount a defense. On the other hand, the man focused on escaping and ignored what was happening behind him. The long sword in the woman's hand slashed downward and a sword light flashed out, colliding with the attack coming from behind. Following the commotion, the woman's body flew into the air like a paper kite. She spat out a mouthful of fresh blood in midair and her complexion turned as pale as a sheet. Martial Peak, Chapter 4275, Heavenly Sword Union. The woman seemed to have suffered heavy injuries previously, therefore, this attack only made her condition worsen. The other man looked back in horror and a trace of struggle and hesitation flashed through his eyes before he fled without pause. Shameless! Chu Huashong cursed upon witnessing this scene. The person she cursed was not the group of people attacking, but the man running at the forefront. This fleeing pair were clearly companions. They were either lovers or senior brother and junior sister. Now that they were in danger, only the woman had turned around to defend against the attacks and was injured as a result. On the contrary, the man not only did not turn around to help but ran even faster instead. It was the height of despicableness. His actions even made him seem like he wanted the woman to buy more time for him to escape. In their current state, he might not be able to escape his pursuers even if he turned around to help his companion. There was a chance that she might survive if he had done that, however, there was no doubt that she would die now that he had abandoned her. Chu Huashong was also a woman. It could have been her in that situation. How tragic would that have been? Then, she thought back to what Yang Kai had done so far. No matter what kind of situation they were in, or how badly they were injured, he had never abandoned her. Be that as it may, they could not be said to have a close relationship with each other. They had only met once or twice before after all. Comparing these 2 men, their characters were as different as night and day. She had not thought much about this before, but now that she made a comparison, she couldn't help feeling a sense of warmth and sweetness in her heart. Likewise, Yang Kai was also enraged. The pursuers were about to attack once more, but the woman was powerless to defend herself. Seeing that, he rushed forward and appeared in front of her while throwing out a punch at the same time. Space principles flared and the void shattered. The expressions of the pursuers changed greatly. They hurriedly took action to defend themselves as one of them shouted, "Who?" There was a series of rumblings and when the dust settled, the pursuers were disheveled and their complexions had gone pale. All of them looked in Yang Kai's direction with fear in their eyes. Yang Kai stared back at them coldly as he asked, "Ruoshi, are you all right?" The woman originally thought that she could not escape death today, but who could have known that a reliable figure would appear in front of her and block the barrage of attacks for her at a critical moment? She looked up, thinking that the back looked strangely familiar. When she heard his voice, her beautiful eyes widened in surprise as she asked in a trembling voice, "Sir?" She nearly thought that she was dreaming. Ever since departing from the star boundary and heading out into the outer universe together, they had not heard anything from each other after they were devoured by a myriad facets insect. She had tried to search for him, but the 3,000 worlds were simply too vast. There were as many great territories as hairs on an ox. Moreover, each great territory was large and boundless. Trying to find a person in the 3,000 worlds was harder than trying to find a needle in a haystack. Throughout her journey, she continued her search and experienced all sorts of hardships. She finally arrived at Lang Ya Paradise. Following the legacy of her ancestor, she joined Lang Ya Paradise and became one of its disciples. When she heard that the Blood Monster Cave Heaven was about to open, she struggled desperately to obtain a place among the participants. With Yang Kai's abilities and heritage, she believed that he would definitely enter the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. In that case, she only needed to search for him inside. It would be much easier than her search in the past. Unfortunately, the Blood Monster Cave Heaven was filled with dangers at every corner. She coincidentally met up with a senior brother, so they decided to travel together. Who could have known that they would encounter trouble and be hunted down by others? Just as she was about to die, Yang Kai miraculously appeared in front of her. She had the sudden impulse to burst into tears. She had been able to endure all the hardships and tribulations on her own before she saw him. Her expression never changed even with a blade held to her neck. However, she reacted like a child who finally found support after suffering grievances outside the moment she saw him. Yang Kai never expected to encounter Zhong Ruoxi here either, much less that their reunion after so many years would be under such circumstances. Back in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, he had tried to ask Jiyu Pan from Lang Ya Paradise about her. It was a pity that Jiyu Pan claimed that she had never heard the name Zhong Ruoxi before. Yang Kai figured that there were two possibilities. One was that Zhong Ruoxi had not gone to Lang Ya Paradise. The other was that Jiyu Pan had not met her. There were at least hundreds of thousands of people in Lang Ya Paradise's main sect, so it was impossible for Jiyu Pan to know all of its disciples. During their conversation, Chu Huashong landed next to Yang Kai and crouched beside Zhong Ruoxi. She stretched out her hand to support her and asked in concern, "Junior sister, are you all right?" Zhong Ruoxi shook her head slowly and whispered, "I'm fine." Then, she abruptly opened her mouth and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Chu Huashong's expression changed slightly. How could she not know that this woman's injuries were very severe? She quickly took out some healing pills and fed them to Zhong Ruoxi. "Senior Sister Chu, please take care of my friend." Yang Kai's voice was low and grim. It was a tone she had never heard from him before. Although he sounded calm, she could sense the hidden rage rampaging beneath that tranquility. Rest assured, Chu Huashong carried Zhong Ruoxi and moved to a spot in the distance. The pursuers frowned deeply at the sight and the young man in the lead spoke with a dark expression. "Who are you? Please don't interfere in the matters of Heavenly Sword Union. Am I supposed to just stand back and watch as you try to kill my friend?" Yang Kai glanced at the young man coldly. The young man frowned slightly. After briefly considering the situation, he cupped his fist. "In that case, I will take my leave now." After saying that, he turned to leave. He seemed to have realized that Yang Kai was strong after the exchange of blows just now, so he did not wish to start a fight so easily. Yang Kai shouted, "Did you think you could just leave after hurting others? Do you think something so simple exists?" Who could have known that the young man was actually only pretending to leave? His real purpose was to distract Yang Kai. The words had only left Yang Kai's mouth when he suddenly shouted, "Die! *Xiao, star." The ground beneath Yang Kai shuddered and a green vine shot out without any prior warning. The vine was like a snake that wrapped around Yang Kai so tightly that he resembled a dumpling. That was not all. The vine was covered in incredibly sharp thorns that stabbed into his skin and released a powerful poison. He never intended to retreat in the first place. The fact that he had tried to kill Zhong Ruoxi and the other man could not be leaked out to the world, otherwise, he would be in huge trouble even if he managed to walk out of the Blood Monster Cave Heaven alive. Heavenly Sword Union could be considered among the top second-class great forces with a number of 6th-order open heaven realm masters assuming command. Nevertheless, it was vastly inferior compared to Lang Ya Paradise. That was because Lang Ya Paradise had high-rank open heaven realm masters. Blinded by wealth just now, he had planned to kill and rob Zhong Ruoxi and the other Lang Ya Paradise disciple when he saw that they were not very powerful. Who could have known that they would encounter Yang Kai and Chu Huashong here? When he saw Yang Kai and Chu Huashong, he immediately decided to silence all witnesses to his crimes. If word about this incident were to spread, forget about Lang Ya Paradise's reaction. Heavenly Sword Union would be the first to capture him and offer his head up as an apology. The only way to ensure his safety was to kill them all. At the same time the green vine shot out of the ground, he charged towards Yang Kai. His sword flashed briefly and slashed towards Yang Kai's neck. The others also quickly unleashed their killing moves. Every one of those attacks was extraordinarily powerful and they seemed intent on killing Yang Kai on the spot. "How dare dead men like you come out to cause trouble?" Yang Kai roared. With a whooshing sound, Golden Crow's true fire covered his entire body and began burning down everything around him. The vine curled around his body was an extraordinary treasure, nevertheless, it was powerless before the raging Golden Crow's true fire. Twitching like a living thing, it hurriedly shrank back and tried to plunge into the ground again. Yang Kai grinned madly, reached out a hand, and caught the vine, all the while ignoring the thorns that dug into his flesh and secreted poison which was making him slightly dizzy. With his Dragon Clan heritage, Yang Kai had incredibly strong resistance to poison. Most poisons were completely ineffective against him, but this vine managed to affect him slightly. It could be seen how powerful the poison was. Even if ordinary cultivators did not die from the effects of this poison, they would lose most of their combat power once afflicted with it. The realization struck Yang Kai suddenly. No wonder the auras of Zhongruo Shi and that fleeing man seem so weak. It looks like they have been poisoned by the vine. Yang Kai held the vine in his grip, and under the heat of the Golden Crow's true fire, it kept twisting and struggling about. He then flicked the vine as though he was wielding a whip and sent it lashing towards the attackers. Their expressions changed drastically. They never imagined that this man could break free so quickly. After all, they had used this very trick to kill many people before. Many of those victims had even been stronger than them. Before they could understand what was going on, the vine sent them flying backwards. Every one of them coughed up blood in mid-air. They looked terrified when they hit the ground. If Yang Kai had unleashed world force, they would have understood why they were defeated in one move. However, the aura radiating from him was still within the bounds of the Emperor Realm. How can an Emperor Realm cultivator be this powerful? We are not his opponents at all. Retreat! The young man in the lead shouted as they desperately performed their secret techniques to escape from this place. At this point, they did not care whether or not they would be exposed for trying to kill Lang Ya Paradise disciples. Survival was their top priority. Solidify! Yang Kai shouted as he pushed his space principles and the surrounding space instantly transformed into a cage. Those people felt the space around them becoming viscous, like they had fallen into a quagmire and could not move. They turned around and looked at Yang Kai in horror only to see him walking towards them with a wooden expression. He arrived at the closest person, glanced down at them, and casually threw a punch. That person's head exploded open like a smashed watermelon, with brain matter and blood splattering everywhere. Then, he walked over to the next person, glanced down at them, and threw another punch. Next came the third, followed by the fourth. In the blink of an eye, only the young man leading the pursuers remained alive, trembling from head to toe. Although he was desperately trying to summon his strength, he discovered that his Emperor Qi was not flowing smoothly. Forget fighting back, even moving a finger was an extremely difficult task. He watched helplessly as Yang Kai walked over to him. The fear in his heart overflowed from his eyes. He was on the verge of a mental breakdown as he screamed, "Don't kill me, don't worry. I won't kill you." Yang Kai looked at the young man calmly. The young man could barely believe his ears. Really? On the other hand, Yang Kai said nothing. With a flick of the vine, he wrapped the young man up in it. The young man, who was now wrapped up like a dumpling, asked in a horrified voice, "What are you doing?" Yang Kai slowly crouched beside the young man and lowered his head to look at him. Then, he picked up the young man's right arm and gave a powerful squeeze *catcher. The sound of bones breaking rang out. The young man screamed in agony, but before his scream ended, the sound of bones breaking rang out again, raising his screams by a whole octave *catcher star. Yang Kai slowly and methodically made his way up. In the blink of an eye, He broke the young man's right arm into 7 or 8 sections. It would have been one thing if only the bones had been broken, but the key point was that the meridians along the young man's arm had been destroyed completely as well. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4276, I said I won't kill you, so I won't kill you. It started with one of the young man's arms being crushed. Then, it was his second arm, followed by both his legs. The continuous sound of bones breaking was extremely disturbing. The fear and despair in his eyes grew stronger and stronger, but his screams slowly grew weaker and weaker. He became breathless instead. The entire process took no more than a half cup of tea's time. In that time, all the bones in his body had been crushed to pieces and all the meridians in his body were destroyed. This kind of pain was not something ordinary people could withstand. The most important point was that he could clearly feel the traces and movements of each bone when they were broken. What horrified him even more was Yang Kai's expression, which remained completely calm and indifferent, almost cold and meticulous, making him look like he was handling something very serious. Please kill me, the young man murmured with lifeless eyes, kill me. It didn't matter if all his bones were broken. With his cultivation, he only needed to recuperate for 3 to 5 years and consume some spirit pills to recover from even such major injuries. However, there was no way to recover once his meridians had been destroyed. Even if he could heal all the broken bones in his body, he would only be a cripple in the future. He could never cultivate again. For a cultivator, it was a fate worse than death. There was no crueler fate than that. Won't killing you be going too easy on you? Yang Kai stood up and looked down on this person contemptuously, his expression still as calm as ever. I'm a man who means what he says. I said I won't kill you, so I won't kill you. After that, he took off the young man's space ring and retrieved the space rings from the others. Turning around, he walked back to Chu Hua Shong. Chu Hua Shong was in shock. It was her first time seeing Yang Kai acting so cruel. He had always given her the impression of a mild-tempered man. At the very least, he was warm and gentle with her. Be that as it may, his current actions could only be described as cruel and ruthless. It was true that he had not killed the young man from Heavenly Sword Union, but this fate was more despairing than death. Just who is this woman? She lowered her head to look at Zhong Ruoxi, who she was carrying in her arms. I can't believe seeing her hurt made Yang Kai so furious. Although she did not know the answer to her question, Chu Hua Shong could be certain that he had a close relationship with this young woman. How is Ruoxi? Yang Kai came to Chu Hua Shong and placed 2 fingers on the young woman's wrist to probe her condition while asking. After a while, he breathed a sigh of relief. She was heavily injured, but her injuries had not damaged her foundation, hence, she would recover fully after recuperating for some time. Many thanks for your life-saving grace, senior brother. A voice came from the side suddenly. It was the man who had been fleeing alongside Zhong Ruoxi earlier. Seeing that his pursuers were gone, he returned and thanked Yang Kai. Yang Kai turned to look in that direction and his originally gentle gaze instantly turned frosty. What happened earlier had not escaped his notice. Both this person and Zhong Ruoxi were being pursued just now. It was bad enough that he had not protected her. When an attack came from behind, it was only she who turned around to defend. On the other hand, he had taken the opportunity to flee even faster. He didn't even bother to look back to see what had happened to her. It was one thing if they did not know each other, however, they had been escaping together, so how could they be unrelated to one another? How could Yang Kai have any good impression towards a person like that? Even Chu Hua Shong looked at this man with an expression of disgust. Sir, this is my senior brother, Du Shu. Zhong Ruoxi introduced weakly. Why would Yang Kai care to know that person's name? He simply shouted, "Scram!" Du Shu originally had a smile on his face, but when he heard Yang Kai telling him to get lost, his expression suddenly became incredibly awkward. He said falteringly, "Senior brother, why must you be so hurtful with your words? Although you rescued my junior sister and I, we are still from Lang Ya Paradise. It's a disgrace to Lang Ya Paradise for having a disciple like you. Get lost." Du Shu's face flushed red in embarrassment and then he became angry out of shame. It looked like he wanted to say something back, but he did not dare to speak the words that were on the tip of his tongue when he recalled the strength and brutality Yang Kai displayed earlier. In the end, he could only glance at Zhong Ruoxi angrily before he turned to leave. Chu Huashong watched that person's back and frowned. Is that person really from Langwei Paradise? He is a disciple of one of the 72 paradises. How could he act like that? Lowering her head, she asked Zhong Ruoxi, "Are you also from Langwei Paradise?" Zhong Ruoxi replied, "Yes. Senior brother Du and I might belong to Langwei Paradise, but we are just inner disciples." Chu Huashong understood. Most sects divided their disciples into 3 grades. The first were the outer disciples. They had the lowest status and worst potential. Next came the inner disciples. They had much better aptitudes and potential. The strongest among the disciples were the core disciples or legacy disciples. These talents were the future hope and pillars of the major sects. Both Chu Huashong and Jiyu Pan were core disciples while Zhong Ruoxi and that man called Du Shu were inner disciples. Legacy disciples and core disciples were the smallest in number. Generally, only the cultivators who could condense sixth-order elements were qualified to be chosen. Even among the major cave heavens and paradises, each sect did not have more than a dozen legacy or core disciples. Nevertheless, it was hard to say how many out of this dozen or so people would succeed and advance into the open heaven realm and how many would fall. Upon knowing that they were from Langwei Paradise, Chu Huashong became even more curious. Heavenly Sword Union might be relatively powerful, but they wouldn't dare to provoke Langwei Paradise. Why did those people pursue you so doggedly just now? Zhong Ruoxi said, "We accidentally discovered a medicine garden earlier. It seemed to be one created by Blood Monster Divine Monarch. We found many valuable herbs, so those people were blinded by their greed." Yang Kai immediately snorted coldly, "Men die for wealth. As long as the people from Heavenly Sword Union could kill Zhong Ruoxi and Du Shu, who would know that they had attacked people from Langwei Paradise? This matter would not be exposed. If Zhong Ruoxi and Du Shu had not met Yang Kai here, they would certainly be facing a bleak future. What Zhong Ruoxi never expected was that Du Shu would be so unreliable. He had been very eager to flirt with her and constantly displayed his affection when they were at Langwei Paradise. His usual demeanor was also rather upright. Although she had explicitly rejected him on numerous occasions, he had continued to persevere. Afterwards, they happened to encounter each other in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. Considering the dangers of this place, she decided to travel together with him. It had made him very happy, so he had been extremely diligent in every way. Even so, he turned out to be as timid as a mouse when faced with a crisis. With their strength, they would not have been able to kill those people from Heavenly Sword Union even if they fought back with everything they had, but their enemies would also have suffered greatly as a result. The best chance at surviving would have been if they could scare their opponents off. However, Du Shu chose to escape without even trying to fight, leaving Zhong Ruoxi no choice but to escape with him. In the end, it turned into the situation Yang Kai had witnessed earlier. "Ruoxi, the top priority is treating your wounds. We can talk about the rest later," Yang Kai said. Zhong Ruoxi gave a non-committal grunt in response. He took her from Chu Huashong's arms and placed her into the small sealed world without another word. Then, he called out to Chu Huashong, "Let's go, senior sister." The two of them continued on their journey while the cries of the young man from Heavenly Sword Union came from behind them as he begged in despair, "Please kill me." There were no traces of other cultivators along their journey and they did not see many traces of monster beast activity either. Many of the cultivators were in possession of a map sold by Red Cloud's auction house. Naturally, they moved forward by relying on the directions of the map. It was not surprising that their journey was calm since they were traveling the path that others had traveled earlier. This only happened because Yang Kai and Chu Huashong had encountered too many hardships along their way, which delayed their travels. Otherwise, they would not have fallen behind the others. After traveling for 2 days, Yang Kai's expression suddenly changed and he immersed his mind into the small sealed world. He might have been traveling all this while, but he had always kept an eye on Zhong Ruoxi's condition inside the small sealed world. Just now, she had called for him. Sending his soul avatar inside, Yang Kai stood in front of Zhongruo Shi. She smiled slightly and said delightedly, "I knew you would come to the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, sir." Yang Kai was surprised and asked, "Did you come here just to look for me?" En. Blinking, she continued, "Hasn't sir been looking for me all this while as well? Senior sister Ji told me everything. She said that you once sought her out in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary to ask about me. Ji Pan came to look for you." Upon further consideration, Yang Kai understood the situation. He had asked Ji Pan for information on Zhongruo Shi back in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. At the time, she said she had never heard of the name Zhongruo Shi before. It was not until she returned to Lang Wei Paradise that she deliberately went around inquiring for information. That was how she found Zhongruo Shi. Senior sister Ji has taken great care of me. I would not have been able to become an inner disciple if not for her. Then, I'll have to thank her properly next time. Yang Kai nodded lightly. The image of a petite young girl with a paintbrush in hand, eating dried fish with her head lowered slightly involuntarily flashed through his mind. Sitting cross-legged opposite Zhongruo Shi, Yang Kai looked at her and grinned, "I'm glad. Although it has been years since we've last met, you've not gotten thinner." "Good, very good." She blushed beet red. "Sir, are you calling me fat?" "Of course not. You're perfect the way you are right now. You're neither fat nor thin." Yang Kai chuckled. "By the way, did you go straight to Lang Wei Paradise after we parted ways back then?" She nodded. "That's right. I couldn't find sir, however, I knew you knew that my ancestor came from Lang Wei Paradise. I believed that you would surely look for me there, so I went there." Zhongruo Shi had not been very strong at the time. Moreover, she had to wander the 3,000 worlds alone. How difficult had it been for her to go to Lang Wei Paradise? It was fortunate that she had some of her ancestors' memories and knew quite a lot about the outer universe. Otherwise, a lone girl like her would have been devoured cleanly by others. Even so, the journey had taken her more than 10 years. It was not until several years ago that she finally arrived at Lang Wei Paradise. Joining Lang Wei Paradise was not difficult. Her ancestor had been a Lang Wei Paradise disciple after all, so she received some preferential treatment. Besides, her own aptitude was not poor. Lang Wei Paradise was also happy to accept a disciple like her. It was just that it had not been easy to survive in Lang Wei Paradise. That place was one of the 72 paradises, so although it had a grand reputation, it was still a large sect. It was not easy to stand out among the countless disciples. Zhongruo Shi had crawled her way through the lower levels and finally borrowed Ji Pan's help before she successfully became an inner disciple. Be that as it may, she did not tell Yang Kai about these matters. The hardships she went through in the past were not worth mentioning. Meeting her sir once more in this vast universe was the greatest gift from the heavens she could ask for. Yang Kai nodded. "I guessed as much. I wanted to head to Lang Wei Paradise, but I was held up by some other things. After he came out from the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, he had wanted to go to Lang Wei Paradise to look for Zhongruo Shi. It was just that he later obtained Voidland and the root from the World Tree, so he had to hurriedly return to the star boundary instead." Marshall Peak, Chapter 4277, "You actually have the guts to come here." After Zhongruo Shi finished her story, she asked Yang Kai about what he had encountered over the years. Yang Kai did not conceal anything from her. He told her that he had been lured to a place called Seven Wonders Land where he served as a worker for some time following their separation. Later, he took the opportunity to escape when an incident arose and inadvertently joined First In. Afterwards, he wandered into the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. Zhongruo Shi's eyes filled with pleasant surprise upon learning that he had gone back to the star boundary and repaired the shattered world principles. She was different from him in the sense that she was truly born and raised in the star boundary, therefore, she held a special affection for that world. When the world principles shattered and the star boundary was on the brink of collapse, she too had hoped to find a method to restore the world one day. Nevertheless, she knew that it was bound to be an extremely long and difficult process. Contrary to her expectations, Yang Kai had succeeded in such a short time. Sir is really amazing. He is capable of performing feats that ordinary people can never hope to achieve. If I think back to everything he has done in the past, which of those feats were something an ordinary cultivator could have done? When she learned that he had acquired a spirit province in the 3,000 worlds, established Voidland, and brought several 100,000 people from the star boundary there, her admiration for him grew stronger and stronger. Over the past few years, she had cultivated extremely hard just to become one of Lang Ya Paradise's inner disciples. On the other hand, Yang Kai had founded a sect in the outer universe. The gap between them was apparent at a glance. She had condensed the fifth-order elements. Since entering the outer universe, she had spent most of her time journeying to Lang Ya Paradise. She did not have any means to earn resources either, therefore, it could be said that she achieved nothing for the past decade. Her strength had not grown by much either. It wasn't until she entered Lang Ya Paradise that her circumstances changed for the better. Disciples from any sect had to obtain their own cultivation resources through hard work, meaning it was impossible for them to receive anything without effort. For that reason, Zhongruo she had no resources available for use even after she joined Lang Ya Paradise. After all, she was only an insignificant outer disciple at the beginning. That might be the reason why many disciples of various sects had such slow progress in their cultivation. They often had to perform various tasks for years, decades, or even longer just to build up enough merits to exchange for necessary cultivation resources. When they finished consuming these resources, they would have to continue completing tasks until they could gather all of the required open heaven element powers. If they had a sufficient supply of resources, then their speed of cultivation would surely increase significantly. After Jiyu Pan returned from the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, she sought out Zhongruo Shi, checked her aptitude, and gave her some fifth-order materials. It was only then that Zhongruo Shi finally began cultivating for real. Jiyu Pan was one of Lang Ya Paradise's core disciples. Although she had condensed sixth-order elements, even she could not obtain sixth-order materials at will. After all, each sixth-order material was worth 10 or 20 million open heaven pills. These resources were treated as strategic reserves in any sect, so it was impossible to obtain them casually. It was the limit just for her to acquire fifth-order materials. Senior Sister Jiyu has been very good to me. She told me that you helped her greatly in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. Moreover, she said she would not have come out of the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary alive without Sir's help. Yang Kai smiled. She is a virtuous and upright woman. Pondering quietly for a moment, he continued, "Do you want to start over again? I have some Tai Yi soul cleansing water in my possession. It can wash away the powers in your Dao seal and allow you to condense new ones. There's no need to worry about the resources. I have quite a lot of them." Zhongruo she shook her head at those words. "No need, sir. I know my own limits. Even though I am capable of forcefully condensing sixth-order elements, I'm afraid I won't be able to survive the breakthrough to the open heaven realm." The consequence of failure was the destruction of her body. That was one of the problems that plagued countless cultivators. In order to advance into the open heaven realm, one of the problems the cultivators faced was obtaining resources. The higher the order of the material, the more expensive and difficult to obtain such resources became. The other problem was the carrying capacity of a cultivator's Dao seal. That was why cultivators would only choose resources within the range of their financial abilities and carrying capacities, regardless of who they were. While Zhongruo Shi's aptitude was certainly not bad, it was not as good as Chu Huashong or Jiyu Pan's. It was undeniable that condensing sixth-order elements would be dangerous for her. However, Yang Kai had the Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pills in his possession. The Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill was refined with world source liquid as its main ingredient and could significantly increase a cultivator's chances of entering the open heaven realm successfully. Therefore, Yang Kai believed that her risks of failure when advancing into the open heaven realm was not high even if she condensed sixth-order powers. But upon further consideration, Yang Kai realized that fifth-order elements were enough. Zhongruo she could slowly cultivate until she reached the seventh-order open heaven realm one day. There was a risk even if she used the Tai Yi soul cleansing water, so he decided to leave the decision to her. After telling her to get a good rest, Yang Kai withdrew his mind from the small sealed world. A few more days passed. Zhong Ruo she was almost fully recovered at this point, so Yang Kai released her and properly introduced her to Chu Huashong. Only then did Zhong Ruo she learn that the other party was a core disciple of Yin Yang Cave Heaven. Her expression became a little weird when she looked at him. Needless to say, she had heard of the name Yin Yang Cave Heaven. Chu Huashong and Yang Kai had been traveling together all by themselves. Not to mention that the way Chu Huashong looked at him and spoke to him were clearly suggestive. It was inevitable that Zhong Ruo she would misunderstand. As they gradually moved forward, they began to come across traces of other cultivators. They also encountered the occasional fleeing monster beasts and even found several battlefields. Yang Kai knew that they had finally caught up to the others after rushing to get here. Be that as it may, the gains he received inside the Blood Monster Cave Heaven were practically negligible. It was extremely depressing. Chu Huashong had obtained a 7th-order monster beast core at the Blood Lake, while he only obtained a 5th-order monster beast core. By contrast, he had acquired so many treasures back in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary that he nearly couldn't carry them. Just as Yang Kai was wondering whether he had used up all his luck back in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, he suddenly noticed a large group of people gathering at a spot not too far ahead. Thus, he couldn't help feeling surprised. It had to be said that this place was located quite deep in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. It had far exceeded the range of the areas marked on the map. Throughout history, nobody had ever gotten this far since the Blood Monster Cave Heaven was first opened. It was rumored that the deeper one ventured into the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, the greater the dangers became. However, their journey here had been completely unimpeded, without the slightest hint of danger. It was not just Yang Kai's group who managed to get this far, there were also many others who had gotten there before them. Hence, it was strange why these people were gathering in that direction. Curious, Yang Kai led Chu Huashong and Zhong Ruoshi over. It didn't take long before they arrived atop a crowded mountain. Yang Kai swept his gaze around and saw several acquaintances whom he once met in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. These people were bearers chosen by the divine spirits. In the end, it was only thanks to his help that they could leave the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary safely. When they parted ways, these people had left their respective faith tokens with Yang Kai so that he could visit them at their sect when he had the time. They promised to provide him with the best hospitality they could offer. For that reason, many eyes immediately lit up upon seeing Yang Kai again. They quickly came forward and cupped their fists at him in greeting. Yang Kai returned the greeting, but before they could exchange pleasantries, he heard a furious roar. "Yang Kai, I can't believe you actually have the guts to come here." For some reason, listening to this voice enraged Yang Kai greatly. He looked in the direction of the voice only to see a group of people flying over from another mountain with great fanfare. It was clear that this group of people had been resting over there but came over after spotting him. The person in the lead was none other than Yin Xinjiao of Shen Yuan Cave Heaven. Yin Xinjiao and Yang Kai had a feud between them. Before the Blood Monster Cave Heaven opened, Yang Kai had stolen his entrance and almost caused him to lose out on this opportunity. Yin Xinjiao later led a pair of his junior brothers to hunt Yang Kai down. There was no saying what would have happened if Yang Kai had not borrowed the strength of Golden Gorilla King and a monster beast wolf to escape their pursuit. It was only natural for these two sworn enemies to blaze with hatred now that they came face to face with each other. Yin Xinjiao was surrounded by many people. However, what surprised Yang Kai slightly was that Pei Wenxian of Myriad Demons Heaven was among them. This guy didn't die. Yang Kai glanced at Pei Wenxian in astonishment. He recalled Black Crow Divine Monarch shooting a blood arrow at him, and Pei Wenxian no longer had an identity token to protect him. How did he survive? As expected of a disciple from a major sect, his heritage was indeed extraordinary. The sight of these two together caused Yang Kai's teeth to grind slightly. "Is he Yang Kai?" A handsome young man swept his eyes over him and asked. Yin Xinjiao said, "That's right. He is Yang Kai." The young man arrogantly said, "I heard you defeated my junior sister Yu Luo Shuo in one move in the Azura Arena." Yang Kai raised a brow at those words. "Yu Luo Shuo is your junior sister?" Who are you? If Yu Luo Sha is his junior sister, then he must also be from Azura heaven. The young man replied, My name is Ba Liang. Remember it well, for I will be the one to kill you. While saying so, he grinned at Yang Kai, revealing a set of white teeth. Another young man stepped forward, Brother Ba, where does your confidence come from? Yang Kai's head is mine. And you are? Yang Kai was so furious that he laughed. He had heard from Chu Hua Shong that many people wanted to kill him. The cave heavens and paradises had taken notice of him already, but it was inconvenient for the renowned open heaven realm masters to take direct action against him because they had their reputation and their sect's reputations to maintain. For that reason, they left this matter to their juniors. The Blood Monster Cave Heaven was undoubtedly the best place to resolve this issue. Nobody would say anything if Yang Kai was killed in this place. Nevertheless, rumors were simply rumors. He never imagined that so many people would actually want to kill him as soon as he arrived at this place. It was one thing if Pei Wenxian and Yin Xinjiao wanted him dead. They had personal grudges against him after all. It was also reasonable for Ba Liang of Azura Heaven to come looking for trouble. Ba Liang had a justifiable reason to avenge his junior sister and recover Azura Heaven's face. On the other hand, the last person who popped up out of nowhere was completely unfamiliar to Yang Kai. Clearmind Heaven, Qiu Kangxian. Clearmind Heaven? Yang Kai couldn't help thinking that the name sounded familiar. After thinking carefully about it, he suddenly recalled where he heard the name before. He had met a Clearmind Heaven disciple with the name Young Master Hai during his first time in Thousand Bird Star City. That person had been harassing Luo Hai Yi, so Yang Kai taught him a little lesson. As a result, he was captured and punished by the law enforcement team of Thousand Bird Star City. The incident had enraged the proprietress so badly that she silently pursued and killed young Master Hai in the void outside the Star City. Due to this incident, Hai Pingla of Clear Mind Heaven joined forces with Qin Ji and the others to besiege the proprietress during Old Bai's breakthrough to the open heaven realm. Another person stepped forward and politely cupped his fist at Yang Kai. Azure Nether Paradise. Yi Cheng, here for your head, Brother Yang. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4278, Assistance. 4 cave heavens and 1 paradise. All of them wanted Yang Kai to die. These were only those who openly announced their intentions. There were even more who kept silent but watched Yang Kai with great interest. Many gazes were fixed on his neck and heart, as though wondering which location was better to target should they make their move. A rough estimate indicated that there were as many as a dozen cave heavens and paradises, with approximately 20 to 30 other cultivators together with Pei Wenxian and Yin Xinjiao in the lead. These people were the elite core disciples of the various cave heavens and paradises and had condensed 5th-order open heaven realm elements at the very least. Even so, many amongst them had condensed 6th-order open heaven realm powers. It could be said that the most excellent and talented cultivators in the younger generation of the 3000 worlds were gathered here. One day, the cultivators in this place who managed to advance into the open heaven realm would surely become powerful great experts who ruled over the world. The audience was horrified as many people looked over from the mountains in the vicinity. They did not know who Yang Kai was or how he managed to provoke so many cave heavens and paradises that so many people hated him and wanted to take his life. On the mountain where Yang Kai was standing, the expressions of the cultivators who came over and greeted him earlier became very solemn. They only came to greet him because they received his help back in the grand ancient ruins boundary. Who could have known that they would be mixed up in this mess as a result? They were not ungrateful people who did not know how to repay their debts, and a life-saving debt was heavier than a mountain. It was only natural that they paid him back in full. It was just that each of them was a representative of their respective sect. If they got caught up in Yang Kai's mess, there was a high chance that their actions would also affect the force behind them. Thus, they hesitated to take action. Yi Cheng of Azure Nether Paradise gave a small smile and looked at Yang Kai with a warm expression. I've long heard of you, Brother Yang. After meeting you today, I can see that you are worthy of your reputation. It's a pity that I can't chat with you, Brother Yang. It truly makes me sigh with regret. Yin Xinjiao coldly snorted. Why are you spewing so much nonsense? Let's attack him all together. His head will belong to whomever manages to kill him. Pei Wenxian smiled deviously. In that case, all of you should stand aside. I'll be the one to kill him. If not for the fact that he had some means to protect himself, he would have died a long time ago due to Yang Kai's schemes. Therefore, he was holding a rather heavy grudge. Outsiders, step back. Otherwise, you will be killed without mercy. Another person shouted. It was unknown which cave heaven or paradise he came from, but the aura around him was impressive. Yang Kai had arrived here late, so many people had gathered around on the mountains. Some had quietly escaped after seeing that a conflict was about to break out, and at this moment, even more people retreated after hearing this person's warning. These cultivators quickly scattered into the distance in an instant, like swallows leaving their nests. On the other hand, the cultivators who came over to greet Yang Kai earlier were looking very troubled. A long while passed before one of them cupped his fist and said, "I'm sorry, Brother Yang." With a heavy sigh, he turned and left. It was true that he received a huge favor from Yang Kai in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. Nevertheless, he had no intention of making enemies with so many cave heavens and paradises. There was a high possibility that not only would he die in this place, but he would also bring trouble to his sect. If he were killed by these people, his sect would not dare to seek revenge either. His death would be in vain. With such a bright and promising future ahead of him, why would he willingly choose to die in this place? With the retreat of one person, the others also quickly followed suit, each of them apologizing in shame as they did. Chu Huashong, why aren't you leaving? Ba Liang of Azura Heaven looked at Chu Huashong and questioned. Why would I leave? The world is so vast, so I can go anywhere I want. Can you stop me? Chu Huashong snorted. Ba Liang snorted. It looks like Yin Yang Cave Heaven is standing on the side of this bastard. She replied, all of you should stop speaking in the name of your sects. You can only represent yourselves. Ba Liang gently nodded. There's nothing I can say to refute your words, Junior Sister Chu. I just hope you won't blame me for being ruthless when the fight begins later. To which she chuckled softly, you can try. Junior Sister Zhong, why are you still standing there? Hurry up and come here. Somebody shouted through gritted teeth from among the crowd. Zhong Ruo she looked up and saw that it was the man who had previously been her travel companion, Du Shu. He had arrived at some point and was looking at her sternly from amongst the crowd at this moment. She glanced at him and slowly shook her head, I'm not going. Du Shu's expression changed slightly as he snarled, Junior Sister, do you know what you are doing? Do you know who he is? Du Shu and Zhong Ruo she were both inner disciples of Lang Ya Paradise. They had yet to reach the level of core disciples or legacy disciples, so they had not heard about Yang Kai before. Nevertheless, that did not stop Du Shu from assessing the current situation. With so many elite disciples of various cave heavens and paradises seeking Yang Kai's life, it was only natural that he did not wish to bring trouble upon himself. When he saw Zhong Ruo she standing beside Yang Kai, he immediately tried to call her over so as not to implicate him. Of course, I know who he is. He is my life's savior and benefactor. If anybody wishes to kill him, they will have to go through me first. Zhong Ruo she raised her hand and summoned the Heaven's Order sword, displaying a heroic demeanor. Yin Xinjiao turned to look at Du Shu, Junior Brother Du, is that your junior sister? Then, you better persuade her well. Weapons have no eyes, it will be bad if she were injured once the battle begins. Du Shu cupped his fist in horror, please forgive me, Senior Brother Yin. Junior Sister Zhong might be part of Lang Ya Paradise, but she only joined the sect a few years ago and is not very sensible. However, her attitude does not represent Lang Ya Paradise. Senior brothers, senior sisters, please do what you need to. If she were injured in the fight, then I'm afraid that is her fate. Not bad, brat. Pei Wenxian glanced at Du Shu approvingly, but the depths of his eyes were overflowing with deep disdain and contempt. She cannot represent Lang Ya Paradise, but I can. Isn't that right? A clear voice rang out and a petite figure landed nearby. Zhong Ruo she looked in that direction with an expression of pleasant surprise. Senior Sister Ji Yu? Du Shu looked embarrassed and awkwardly cupped his fist. Du Shu greets senior sister Ji Yu. The person who came was none other than Ji Yu Pan. As a Lang Ya Paradise core disciple, there was no denying that she could represent Lang Ya Paradise's stance in this matter. Everybody was stunned. They did not think that another person, apart from Chu Hua Shong, would dare to support Yang Kai at this time. One was from Yin Yang Cave Heaven and the other was from Lang Ya Paradise. A mere two sects might not seem like much, but the momentum was not heading in a good direction. It was said that the major cave heavens and paradises had two opposing attitudes towards Yang Kai. One side wanted to kill him as early as possible while the other side wanted to win him over to their side. It would now seem that was indeed the case. The attitudes of those cave heavens and paradises were clearly reflected here. Dao is nature and nature is the heart. Ning Dao Ran greets Daoist brothers. An elegant voice sounded. At the same time, another figure landed beside Yang Kai and bowed slightly with one hand on his chest. How lively. Ha ha ha. Why is everybody gathered over here? A loud hearty laughter rang out, followed by a burly figure landing nearby. He had a huge sword strapped to his back and his aura was sharp and fierce. This man immediately drew everybody's attention to him. He was very tall and burly, almost one head taller than the average cultivator. The huge sword on his back was even larger, seeming to pierce the sky even while being carried. It was easy to imagine that this sword would have the power to split mountains with a single swing. This senior brother is... Yang Kai glanced over suspiciously. He was certain he had never met this person before. When Ji Yu Pan and Ning Dao Ran appeared to support him, he was pleasantly surprised. However, their reasoning was understandable. They had interacted with each other in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, so it could be said that they had some friendship between them. It was just that the current situation was so tense that he could not greet them properly. He could only nod his head at them in response. But, who is this tall and muscular guy? Why is he standing on my side? Ning Dao Ran smiled slightly. This is Wei Buq of Divine Cauldron Heaven. I don't think you've met Brother Wei yet, Brother Yang. Divine Cauldron Heaven? Yang Kai immediately understood. Where is Senior Brother Shu? The image of a little fatty popped into his mind. The Yuan magnetic divine bottle gourd in his possession was something the little fatty had refined for him. Wei Buq said, Junior Brother Shu is busy and could not participate in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. Nevertheless, before I left, he told me to thank you on his behalf should I meet you in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, little brother Yang. Yang Kai replied, Senior Brother Shu is too kind. Yin Xinjiao's expression turned dark. Wei Buq, why is Divine Cauldron Heaven meddling in this matter and not focusing on artifact refining? It's bad enough that Divine Cauldron Heaven is meddling in this matter. I can't believe they are opposing us. This is outrageous. Wei Buq tilted his head to the side and picked his nose with a finger. Flicking a booger in Yin Xinjiao's direction, he said, Is Divine Cauldron Heaven only capable of artifact refining? So what if I want to meddle in this matter? Not only is Divine Cauldron Heaven choosing to meddle, but people from True Martial Cave Heaven are choosing to meddle too. He then turned to the side and shouted impatiently, Lin Feng, you're already here. Why are you hesitating like a little girl? Hurry up and get out here. A handsome man with a face like a jade crown coldly snorted from among the crowd in the distance and walked in this direction, snarling while walking, Wei Buq, if you dare to utter just a single rude word again, I will knock out all your teeth. Wei Buq laughed heartily, you'll get the chance. We should find a time to spar together next time. We'll see who knocks out whose teeth. Lin Feng coldly snorted and came to stand beside Yang Kai in a few steps. Yang Kai's heart warmed slightly and cupped his fist. Yang Kai greets senior brothers and senior sisters. Many thanks for your help. Various cave heavens and paradises had joined hands to work against him. Therefore, he couldn't help feeling extremely grateful that there were people willing to stand up for him at this moment. Their willingness to side with him undoubtedly sent out a glaring signal that their respective sects wanted to win him over to their side. Be that as it may, the reason their sects made this decision was definitely related to their persuasion and efforts. Lin Feng glanced at Yang Kai and spat in disdain. Even women are capable of protecting you. It makes no sense for men to do any less than them. What do you mean by women? Chu Hua Shong immediately became unhappy. Lin Feng, you better watch your words. Lin Feng turned his head to the side and feigned ignorance. On the opposite side, the expressions of Yin Xinjiao and the others turned ugly. At first, there were only Chu Hua Shong and Ji Yu Pan, but now there was also Ning Dao Ran, Wei Buq, and Lin Feng. Although there was a huge contrast in numbers still, it would be troublesome to actually attack them. Aside from Zhong Ruo Shi, who they considered insignificant, the others would be very difficult to deal with. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.